Hey guys, welcome to Now That's Debatable. This is your host, Fantastic Facade. I am joined with my trusty co-host, Triple A the Humanist. And today we have two special guests. We have Wes and Justin, both of which have been on the show very recently. This time they're tag teaming it up as Triple A and I tag team each episode. If you're seeing this screen, or if you come to our channel, please do us a favor, like and subscribe. We're tiny, but we're still trying to grow. We've been doing it a long time. We're not out for the likes or the subscriptions, however, it is nice to see a little progress in that field. We're here because we enjoy doing it, we enjoy good conversation ourselves, and hopefully sharpening others. So without further ado, as you can tell from the title of today's video, we are doing Christianity versus Humanism, a showdown. And we're going to let the Christians go first. We're going to have a time section, which I'm going to try to get a timer up when we get our faces up on the screen, which should be momentarily. We're going to do a mic check and a share, and then if you guys want to kind of do a quick introduction, to get a timer up. So how's everybody doing today?
Doing good.
Glad to be here. Doing great.
Like our new open is the
that.
I made that the original logo. You ever heard of the AI? You know what? We're live. All right, let's go.
Yes,
We'll do it live. I'm doing good.
Doing it live. All right, so I actually have a clock up the screen in a minute. If I'm not going to be super strict, but in the first 5 minutes, we'll just try to shut up, and everybody else can talk. Here, give me the talking, and I'll put your timer. I will, if you're talking, say your thought point.
All right. We'll do introductions. My name's Justin. I'm a Christian. I have a point. We'll dive in sure of this episode. First, what Christianity? It's like truth. So I think truth is the most important thing. Second, Christianity is a complete worldview, and comprehensive for life and for faith doctrine. It teaches you how to relate to people, how you relate to yourself, God, and it is very clear. We don't need to appear journal or to the whims of certain people. We can go to the Bible and have a complete worldview. The next third point is that we have the gospel, which is the life, death, resurrection, ascension of Jesus Christ, which is the only good news the world is going to get. And because we have the gospel, we have hope, not only in this present age, but in the age to come. And the fourth point is that Christianity can answer the problems of sin or evil, and they can do so in a way that both gives people hope for change and for repentance. And I know coming out of the New Year's, everyone has New Year's resolution. There's a deep-seated thing in the man's heart where he wants to change, and Christianity makes that possible. So there is a progression that we can have in this life towards, we call sanctification as Christians, where you can grow in godliness and you can truly change from the inside. I'll now turn it over to my partner, Wes.
Thank you, Justin. I'm Wes. Second consecutive week here. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate the opportunity. And I am a Christian as well. My argument is sort of twofold. I make the case that, or I seek to make the case that secular humanism is not good for humanity, and Christianity, therefore, is, or rather, Christianity between the two, and Christianity objectively. Secular humanism as a worldview, as a belief system, and as a religion is false. More than that, secular humanism cannot account for truth at all. And further, secular humanism leads to and often embraces absurdity. Secular humanism is rightly described by the Apostle Paul in Colossians 2:8 as a philosophy and empty deception in accordance with human tradition, in accordance with the elementary principles of the world, rather than in accordance with Christ. Therefore, It is not to be trusted at any level by individuals, corporately, societally, or as a civilization. When we say secular humanism is false, what I mean to say here is that it fundamentally lacks clarity and leads to incoherence and inconsistency. The lack of clarity is seen in the very definition of secular humanism. You ask different secular humanists, they're going to give you different answers. These lack of clear answers lead to fundamental incoherence within itself. There's conflicting definitions oftentimes, and inconsistent with reality, with the ability to explain the external world. Secular humanism is also founded on two basic fallacious presuppositions that amount to special pleading and an appeal to authority. The appeal to authority is the individual, right? That's where the focus is, where secular humanism is concerned. And so the individual can oftentimes say, because I said so, have that personal authority appropriated to themselves. And the response oftentimes is effectively, I disagree, therefore you are wrong. In the special pleading, since there's no accounting for things like consciousness, things like immaterial realities, and the like, there will often be, just give me just a little bit and I can go from there. So give me, the change from non-life to life, and then evolution can take it from there, that type of thing. Now that said, there are a couple of commonalities within the definitions. Naturalism, which I don't know that any secular humanists that I've encountered, including you two fine gentlemen here, would disagree with that. And naturalism involves an automatic presupposed rejection of immaterial reality. With that, naturally, it leads to atheism, which a particular immaterial reality, being God, or rather God's absence, is assumed rather than proved, and a denial of the true God that's revealed in creation, that's revealed in the life, death, and the resurrection of Christ, ultimately is an affront to reality and is false. Secular
that is your
humanism
time exactly,
can't
but you can
for,
continue.
What's that?
So that was your time exactly, but you can continue if you'd like. I can give you another minute.
I'll make it quick, and then we can dive in later on. Secular humanism can't account for truth fundamentally because the human mind is developed through allegedly evolutionary processes that lead to survival rather than truth, leading into a lack of epistemological certainty. Lack of the ability to know truth, period, leads to the lack of ability to know morality at all. And without a standard of morality, there is no moral correction. And you expand that beyond the individual, no moral progress, no moral correction for society as a whole, leads to various absurdities. We won't get into them now. We'll save that for the discussion. By contrast, Christianity is true. There's historical validity to it. There's evidence to support it. Christ entered into history. He died publicly, was raised bodily, and seen by many eyewitnesses. Secular humanism is false, can't account for truth, leads to absurdity, and therefore is not good and cannot be trusted for humanity. Christianity is true, accounts for truth, and has the additional benefits of moral goodness and being beneficial for society. Thanks for letting me go over.
Yep, no worries. AAA is going to do the intro for humanism by himself. He's written something out. When you're ready, AAA, I will start the timer.
Sure. So I believe that there are facts about reality, the universe, and our existence within. There are facts about the way our environment affects us, the way we affect it, and how we as conscious creatures affect each other. As a secular humanist, I believe that we as intelligent beings are capable of gaining knowledge of some of these facts and using that knowledge to promote the well-being of all sentience, not just as a whole, but also the individual. My actions should be tailored considering all humanity, but not at the expense of the individual. Thus, when answering the question of what is best for the well-being of humanity, humanism is not merely a good answer, but the best possible answer there ever could be. Humanism puts humanity at the center of its axiological framework. An act is immoral when it violates someone's well-being. For example, rape is wrong because it's not good for the person being raped. Murder is wrong because it's not good for the person being murdered. Hence, a humanist framework will always have a one-to-one correspondence to well-being, since well-being itself is the standard. When considering what's best for humanity, Christianity will always be inferior to humanism because the best interest of humanity is not the center of its axiological framework. For Christianity, murder isn't wrong because it's bad for the one being murdered, but rather because it offends God. Rape isn't wrong because it violates the victim's well-being, but rather because it offends God. As far as its suitability for the promotion of humanity, Christianity is in a unique disadvantage because when human flourishing and God's commands are at odds, it's the latter that reigns supreme. Try to think of a list of acts, some of which are good for humanity and others which are harmful. Humanism will by necessity allow all that is good and condemn all that is bad. Christianity may or may not do this depending on what's on the list. For instance, we know that giving a gay man the latitude to love and adore another man in the same way that I love and adore my own wife will contribute to his well-being. Christianity could never allow this because of the clear prohibition in Scripture. Humanism has no barriers when promoting our livelihood. There are no dogmas. Anything that promotes humanity as a whole or the individual is permitted insofar that it doesn't violate another's well-being. Humanism isn't even opposed to religious traditions. Consider a man who grew up in a strong and intimately connected Muslim family. Let's suppose that though he adopted humanism, he still enjoys going to the mosque and participating in Islamic traditions because it brings his family closer together. No decree in humanism would prohibit this. But if this man converted to Christianity, then it would be immoral. He'd have to deprive himself of important familial values because it would constitute idolatry. The Christian may object to this point because idolatry is bad for well-being. After all, it will ultimately lead to eternal damnation. If this is your argument, then the onus is on you to prove that it will indeed lead to damnation. If this can be accepted on faith alone, then what's to stop anyone from arbitrarily prohibiting certain acts because it will lead to some unverifiable consequence? Don't mix certain spices. Why? Why, you may ask? Well, because it corrupts your chakra. Do I have any evidence of this? No. Faith, remember? Do you see the problem? Because humanism isn't fettered by dogma or narrowed down to a list of shalls and shall nots, it is able to adapt to new information and emerging technology. In other words, when new data becomes available and proves that a certain course of action isn't the best way to promote human well-being, we can change course. Christianity, on the other hand, since moral decrees come from an omniscient and perfect God, then it follows that they are definite and unchanging. Some Christians see this as a good thing, but it actually leads to outright denial of observable facts, like the already mentioned benefits some receive from homosexual relationships. Point is, any demonstrable good that could ever come from Christianity would by necessity be included in humanism. The same cannot be true for vice versa. That's all I got.
Cool. I accidentally screwed up the timer, but you ended when I reset it at the 1 minute mark, so you're fine.
Dope.
I'm just gonna delete the clock off the screen so that's not a distraction for anyone, and we should be good to continue. Did we want to do timed Q&A or back, kind of cross, or did we want to kind of leave it more open? That's up to you guys.
I'll say leave it open. I mean,
That sounds good.
I had some questions. For one, it sounded like Wes. It sounded like you said that Paul talked about secular humanism.
You're muted.
Wes, you muted.
Yeah, I realize that. My bad. Paul didn't talk about secular humanism directly, but in that letter, what he was actually responding to was a form of Gnosticism in the ancient world. But what I was saying was that description could just as easily and just as accurately describe secular humanism.
You think Gnosticism could be used to describe secular humanism? No,
I think Paul's description, the words he used to describe Gnosticism in that letter, description.
Okay,
yeah,
so you said the critiques that would apply to Gnosticism could also apply to secular humanism.
I'm saying. So Paul that described philosophy and empty deception in accordance with human tradition, in accordance with the elementary principles of the world, rather than in accordance with Christ. Paul said that about Gnosticism. I am saying that will just as accurately describe humanism.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I don't mean to say that secular humanism and Gnosticism are a one-to-one comparison, but rather that critique is equally valid for both.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And also, one question. Hey, Grim, are we still live?
Should be, yeah.
Okay, it looks like it's lagging a bit. So if people in the chat, if you could let us know if it's lagging. But
it looks like it's lagging specifically for me. Here, let me just do this for a second. I'm gonna go with my camera off just to see if it helps.
Okay. All right. Also, you talked about how you said different secular humanists. You said it's empty, and I guess there's not a coherent position because different secular humanists will give you different answers.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, have you talked to different Christians? I mean, it's pretty difficult to find two Christians who would agree on everything.
Well, we're not talking about agreeing on everything, though. We're talking about agreeing on the core. Like, what is Christianity? No Christian would disagree with the centrality of Christ, the preeminence of Christ, his life, his death, his resurrection, and the gospel.
Okay, gotcha. It said it was lagging again. I'm gonna turn my camera off for a little bit too. Maybe
it's fine. It's corrected now. Just so you're aware, chat, you're not actually watching it completely live. There's a lag between what you're seeing and what we're saying, just because that's the nature of electricity and the speed of light. A little bit. It was lagging, admittedly, for a second, but when you said you couldn't hear what what Wes was saying, it's because he was muted, and then we corrected him, and then he started talking, and it was fine, but there was lag on the video. I turned mine off, so it should be fine on video now, but the audio, just so you're aware, is not a one-for-one of what you're hearing versus what we're all saying here in the chat. So we're probably 40-ish seconds ahead of what you're actually seeing. That's about the delay.
Okay. Well,
if it gets really laggy on video, please let us know. But as long as audio quality's there and my camera's off, we should be okay.
Okay, cool. So you're saying I guess the difference is that Christianities wouldn't agree on the core principles, and Christians wouldn't disagree on the core principles, but humanists would.
What do you mean?
So I guess I was, because you had said that the secular humanists was kind of vain and empty or vacuous in a sense because there was no coherent position among secular humanists. And
there is a lack of coherence. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, so it seems to me that there is a lack of coherence among Christians as well. I don't see that. I ask different Christians about different doctrines, and they don't give me the same answer.
Well, yeah, there is disagreement among Christians, but Christianity has a definition, right? Because Christianity has objective truth, has an objective corrective, being the Bible. So if a Christian says that Christianity is something other than what's revealed in the pages of Scripture of the Holy Bible, then they are incorrect. Secular humanism has no such inherent corrective mechanism.
Well, it does. So if humans or sentience is not the center of your framework, then I'd say you're not a humanist. If you think that humanism, I've heard Jordan Peterson, he described Hitler as a secular humanist. That's wrong. I don't think there's a humanist in the world that would agree with that. So
nobody would really want Hitler on their side, to be honest.
Sure. Okay, but we can look at what Hitler did and see that it's not consistent with humanism. So you ever read any of the humanist manifestos? Nothing of the stuff that Hitler did would coincide with that.
So I guess my question, and I'm sure for the listeners too, someone who's trying to understand your position is, obviously I became a Christian, so I understand that process, but how does one become a secular humanist? Like, obviously I know, and truthfully, it's probably the natural default for people, especially if you go into a public school, but if you're coming from somewhere else, how do you become a secular humanist? Like, is there a codified doctrine? Is there, what do you conform people's understanding to that belief so they understand?
So, like official process, like, it's being baptized to or anything. But humanism, you said, put humans at the center of that framework. Like now in the 21st century, to sentience in general. But I'm sorry. Are we lagging again?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. All right. Maybe it's just me then. All right. So am I lagging to you? All right. Okay, cool. So, but we put sentience at the center of our values, and then we make our decisions based on how it affects that center, that being sentience. So, like if we talked about this before, if something isn't good for your well-being, I ought not to do that. That's how that works. But there's no official system. But we could agree that going around murdering people, that's not consistent with humanism. Genocide, that stuff isn't consistent with humanism. I know some Christians that would say that is consistent with Christianity, right? We can look through history. We can look at stuff like the Crusades and stuff like that. I'm sure both of you would reject that. So, like, I guess this lack of coherence that you said applies to humanists, I don't see that in Christianity. And also, I don't think that's an argument against it either.
I don't see a lack of coherence in Christianity either, which is why part of why I'm a Christian.
So
it's coherent.
So you saying you think it's coherent because you're just looking at the doctrine. But if you talk to actual Christians, there is no agreement on what actually is Christianity.
Oh, there's most certainly agreement. There's some doctrinal distinctives that might be a little out there, but
not little doctrinal thing. I mean, just huge things. Like even like I'm sure like you both you don't agree with things like what's it called, the gospel that's all about money. I forget what it's called.
Prosperity gospel.
Yeah, prosperity gospel. Like you don't agree with stuff like that, right?
Not a gospel at all, but
yeah, it's not a gospel at all. It is an anti-biblical gospel.
Well, okay,
so it's inconsistent with the Bible. Therefore, it's not a true representation of Christianity.
Okay, so I could just
that's the standard.
I could just say the same thing. Somebody does blah blah blah. That's not consistent with humanism.
But where is your objective, necessarily corrective source of what secular humanism is?
Are you asking for like some sort of book that we could reference, a manual we can reference?
It can be in any medium. I'm just asking for something right now.
So humanism isn't. It doesn't really belong in the same ballpark as Christianity, right? Because Christianity gives you an answer on origin, on values, morality, really bad one on morality, but it tells you about your destiny, your purpose, all that kind of stuff, right? Humanism doesn't do any of that. It doesn't talk about origin. It doesn't really talk about destiny. Like it's really just addresses morality for the most part. You could be a humanist and you could think that your destiny is just to, I don't know, blend with technology. You could be a humanist and think that you're going to be a naturalist, right? And not naturalist as in the sense that like a rejection of the supernatural, but naturalist like, living off the land and all that type of stuff. Like it doesn't really belong in the same party. Like we're compare humanism to Christianity. I don't think is really fair. Isn't
that the whole idea of what we're doing here?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the
all right. So let me put it this way.
Fair enough. But if you're looking for some sort of source that that could necessarily that we could point to, that I could point to and say, hey, you know, you're not a humanist because you don't do blah blah blah, then that wouldn't be humanism, right? Because we value humans at the center of the axiological framework. Okay. However, we're using science to determine what is and what isn't good. Okay. And this is the problem, relying on a book. If the book gets something wrong, then you can't deviate from it. We can't. Opening. So if you realize that you're going down the wrong course, you could change courses.
Okay, so you mentioned Hitler earlier, that Hitler was not a secular humanist. Well, humanism would look at all of the animals and say that humans have a special place among them, right? Because of morality specifically, right? Well, Hitler, all of the humans, and said that there are some that are more special than others. He took that same logic and took it to another application.
That's not humanism. That's not humanism. That's called racism.
What?
So, but it's the same thing.
I don't disagree, but there's nothing in humanism that necessarily disagrees with that. And
yes, there is. Yes, because you're not valuing humans anymore. Now you're valuing race. This is totally different.
Okay, but humanism doesn't consistently value human life either.
It does.
Because, as we touched on briefly, secular humanism, and you can look up additional sources, they are committed to the availability of abortion.
Some are, some not. So humanism, this is a thing that we tried to touch on a little bit last time. So, so there's no official position. There's no official humanist position on abortion, right? So I kind of went in I don't think if I described it to you, but I described it to Justin the last time we had him on, and I considered abortion a justifiable immorality. It's a justified immorality, right? It's harming the baby, so it violates well-being, so it's immoral, right? But it's justified, right, because of some other reasons. So, however, if technology were to progress and you could terminate a pregnancy without harming the baby, then our current methods of abortion would now become unjustified.
Okay, take the hypothetical out of it for a second, though. Number one, just the statement or just the term justified immorality is itself absurd. It's an oxymoron. An act is either justified or it's immoral. It can't be a just act and immoral simultaneously. Well,
no,
okay.
It's not.
All right. Well, you disagree. Therefore,
I can give you examples.
Right?
I give you. Okay. So, all right. So you said that's not a true dichotomy. That's a false dichotomy. You said justified or immoral. Right, because if it's a moral act, if something's good, it doesn't need to be justified at all. If I help somebody needs money and I give them money, there's no reason to justify that. Even think about this in a legal sense, right? When an officer shoots somebody, right? They'll call the shooting not good. They'll say it's justified. It's a justifiable homicide. So even our legal system is not proclaiming that act to be good. They're saying that because of the situation, that act was necessary. This was the only recourse available to them, so it is justified. It's treating it very differently from a good.
We're not talking about self-defense situations. We're talking about unborn human beings that are human lives that have done nothing wrong that would warrant the death penalty, and the vast majority of the time are not even a threat to the health or life of the mother, and yet the widespread agreement among secular humanists and others that baby can and in some cases should be killed is an incoherence within secular humanism. Because you can't say on the one side we value human life, but also there's a bunch of human lives that not so much.
No. So all right, are we really gonna make this about abortion? Okay. So
that's one of the clear distinctives, I think. So we don't have to.
Okay, so I can
square that circle for me.
So there are a part of humanism, when we consider well-being, there are things that we value in addition to life, right? In addition to health, we look at wealth, we look at bodily autonomy, we look at security, we look at freedom, stuff like that, right? And so when we talk about bodily autonomy, no one has a right to someone else's body. Would you agree?
I mean, that's not what's at issue with
Do
abortion
you
and
have
pregnancy.
do you have a right to someone else's body?
I don't know.
Did you ever have a right to
But
someone else's body?
I did when I was gestating in my mother's womb.
Okay, so
I did not invade. I was not a foreign agent invading, right? And that's one of the things that humanism can't account for, is the special nature of humanity, that the unborn baby is just as special as the mom. Now, if you want,
they're not. So here, so with me, I'm a humanist. I have my own specific position on abortion.
right?
I treat them both equally. I give them the equal amount of rights. Right? You're giving the baby extra rights. You're saying that the baby has a right to the mother's body. The mother does not have a right to the baby's body. Nobody else have a right to anybody else's body, but babies for some reason has a right to the mother's body, right? And that's what we're doing. I don't do that.
All right, I'm going to make one minor correction, and I'll let Justin tag in here. But I'm not granting any rights. I'm recognizing that individuals have rights by virtue of being made in the image of God. I'm not conferring any rights to them. I'm simply recognizing that all human beings are equally valuable, equally dignified, equally have the right to life. That's all.
So, and I wouldn't agree. And this is, I mean, we could have you back on and talk about that. And this is my libertarian kicking in. I don't think anyone has a right to life. I think you have a right to not be killed. If you say you have a right to life, then you necessarily have a right to the things that sustain that life, like food, property, just in general. Like you have a right to someone else's stuff. Like I have a right to life. So if I can't get food on my own, then I have a right for someone else to bring it to me. Otherwise, they're violating my rights. That's the problem with this. Like we would have to devote an entire episode to abortion to really get into like the weeds of this. But like I think that abortion is one of the most complicated things that we could address. That's why I'd rather stay off of it. And on top of that, the Bible isn't pro-life either. God went around killing babies all the time.
Well,
but
again, I think you said this, I think that was a good point from Wes, but I think you said this is gonna probably need a whole episode to itself to dive into there. But the one question I have was, you said you expand at the center if it's against the well-being, but then you included sentient life. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, sentient. So in order for something to have well-being, it needs to be a great experience. So sentience, experiencing, that means the ability to be self-aware and an ability to distinguish yourself from your environment. And so that's why I would say it again.
Can you tell me who you would include in that category besides humans?
Animals.
So McDonald's, is McDonald's wrong for making cheeseburgers then?
Is McDonald's wrong for making cheeseburgers?
Because you have to kill them to make them. So like, are they wrong? Or
I was asking, should we kill animals for food? Oh no, that violates well-being. No, like I mean, I eat meat as well. I mean, and there was a spider in the house. I killed it. It was immoral. I mean, I'll grant all that. I'm a hypocrite.
So just maybe if the cow was a secular humanist, so I guess it sounds a bit contradictory if on the surface of it. I mean, would you explain? So on one sense, if it violates someone's well-being, that's bad.
It's immoral.
You include animals in that well-being, so it's good to. So it's not good. How would you said is that a justified immorality? Cheeseburgers?
No, I wouldn't consider it justified at all. Like, cause like there's no requirement to eat cheeseburgers. It's not like if I don't eat it, I'm gonna die. I think it's the unjustified immorality. And I think that as humanity progresses, you're gonna see us go to a road where we're either vegan or we're able to create our own meat, and there will be no need to kill sentient creatures in order to get it. I think that's a much more. I think not destroying a sentient life to get your food is a better and more humane route than destroying sentient life to get your food.
Okay. So every time you eat meat, you did say like, this is a justified immorality.
No, it is not justified. Like, I mean, I'm on record. My wife is a vegan. I'm on record saying that she's more moral than I am. That she does not eat sentient creatures, and I do.
Okay.
But humanists they agree, they can they don't have the same view on veganism, but that's my position.
Okay, well, there's another plus for Christianity. You can have a cheeseburger and not feel bad, you know.
Well,
Well,
you
bad,
can.
but...
I mean, in Christianity, you can kill children and not feel bad.
No,
I mean,
no.
Well, okay,
No.
But like sometimes with God's command,
We're
this is
the
the
pro-life
thing.
group.
But the Bible's not pro-life. Like let's save the abortion for later. But I mean, we can have you back on and talk about that. But that's one of the big things we have to jump into. The Bible is not pro-life. You had said there was another part during your opening. You said naturalism rejects the supernatural. It rejects these. So humanist. So there's no official humanist position on naturalism. Like you can be what is it called? You could believe in the supernatural and be a humanist. So that there's no position on that.
Secularhumanism.org would disagree with you in affirmations that are part of the basic doctrine. They have affirmations, and one of them is, we deplore efforts to denigrate human intelligence, to seek to explain the world in supernatural terms, and to look outside nature for salvation. They're rejecting.
That's not rejecting the supernatural. That's like explaining the world with magic. Like explaining a phenomenon with magic doesn't mean you're rejecting the supernatural altogether. We're
not talking about magic. We're talking about nature and supernature.
Okay, so supernature, whatever that is. I mean, like, to me, that's indistinguishable from magic. Like, where you part the Red Sea with magic? No, it wasn't magic. It was supernature. I mean, to me, this is indistinguishable. But with supernature, whatever that is, you're not necessarily rejecting it. What they're saying is they're not appealing to that as a cause. But what they're promoting is not metaphysical naturalism, which is a rejection of the supernatural. They're appealing to methodological naturalism, which is what any scientist is. Like when something breaks, like I work in computer science, like my code isn't working, I don't think, I think it's a zombie in there that's messing with it or anything like that. No, I think there's something going on. I did something wrong. There's something with a computer, something like that. Right. So you're not appealing to the supernatural because you have no evidence of that. If you could demonstrate that the supernatural was real and you could demonstrate that it caused things, that would now be part of your epistemic framework. You can now use this to solve other problems. But because it can't be demonstrated, you can't appeal to it. That is methodological naturalism. There's not an outright rejection of the supernatural. Also, I disagree with the website that you stated as well, but I was just explaining their position.
But I mean, Justin, you can jump in if you want to, but I think we've seen quite a bit of absurdity in practice. I mean, recognizing
what's the absurdity in practice?
You've acknowledged that you are immoral on your own terms when it comes to how you treat animal life.
Oh yeah,
right.
That doesn't mean it's coherent. I
know it's not coherent.
That doesn't mean it's human. Okay, I could say I don't understand. So like you could come up with an ethical system, right? And then we could come up with an objective ethical system that uses a standard. We could say happiness. And then I go around doing things that make people sad all the time. That has no effect on the objectivity of the standard. That would just make me a bad adherent of that standard. That's like saying Christianity is incoherent because I know Christians that go around stealing and murdering people. Like this is come on, you gotta don't have a problem with this argument. Like you're saying that the doctrine, you're saying that like a worldview is wrong because some of its adherents, namely this one, eats meat.
No, hear me clearly. when you say that Christians who may go steal and kill, that it's not a reflection on Christianity. Christianity has a standard: thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder. Right? So when a Christian does that, they are not doing so in their capacity as a Christian. They are acting inconsistent with that. When you do things with animals, when kill them, eat them, whatever, that inconsistency fits comfortably within humanism. It is an indictment on the incoherence structurally of humanism as a system. When you say earlier that humanism speaks specifically to morality, and then you identify yourself acting immorally in that system, and there's no corrective that puts you outside of the system.
What do you mean it puts me outside of the system? What do you mean?
There's not. You can be a humanist.
I'm asking what do you mean that some correction that puts me out of the system? You mean you're asking like there's not a certain amount of things that I could do and then no longer be a humanist?
No, I'm saying that your acknowledged immorality is not inconsistent with any of the fundamentals of secular humanism. And
just
so
I just described so I talked about how humanism now it expanded to sentience, and we talked about eating animals, right, and the pain that they have to go through, right. And so here's the framework. Forget about me, because now you're making this into it's like an ad hominem, right? Because if I were to let's say there was another person here who did follow those things.
Facade, where you at, man?
he's turning off his thing because he's the producer. He's running everything.
I know.
But so I also probably am echoing because there were some
a little bit
issues. Yeah, so I didn't want to jump in too much, but if I need to jump in, I can. The long and the short is I think you're conflating things here. So I don't want to say no true Scotsman fallacy.
Hey, Facade, you're echoing really bad. Can you fix the echoing?
That's why I shut up.
Okay.
I mean, I can try to turn it off, but I don't know where it's echoing because I did the best with the program and changed my DNS.
Okay.
While running the show. So I was just quiet.
We'll talk about it later. It's all good.
All right. So, well, yeah, if you can fix your echo, I don't want
to. I'm done talking.
Oh, you say you're done? Okay. All right.
Does that fix the echo?
Yeah, your echo's gone. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I fixed it. Congratulations, me.
Nice.
Yeah, so, no, I was just saying, I think we're kind of conflating here where and I don't want to necessarily go down the road of no true Scotsman fallacy, but it's like, you're kind of saying like, oh, in Christianity, if you follow these rules, and you do these things and you say these words, then you're a Christian. And I might be able to do the same for like a humanist, but there's nowhere in humanism in which if I get far enough away from the rules and I get far enough away from the words that I should say and from the beliefs that I should have, that I'll no longer be a humanist. And I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to bear the burden on a no true Scotsman fallacy of saying, oh, those people just aren't Christians because if they're acting this way, that's not what a Christian would do. Well, I could say the same and be like, oh, well, that's not what a real secular humanist would do, but that's kind of falling fallacy to the no true Scotsman. Well, in reality, there's no reason that a humanist has to abide by a moral system, right? Inherently. So when when Triple A says he's acting immorally, there is no God to judge him for that immoral act. However, if in the framework or in the usage of well-being for sentient creatures, we can judge him objectively as being immoral. Just because there's no God going to punish him in hell for it doesn't make him any more moral or any less moral. And it doesn't take away anything from the view of secular humanism just because this one actor, in this case AAA, does something that is immoral. Any more than a bad actor of Christianity does something that is against Christian, dogma.
the distinction there is the lack of clarity around what it is to be a secular humanist, and the lack of clarity leads to this type of incoherence where one can act in a way
can I really
that
pluck the bear? Can I really poke the bear here? Then,
come on,
what does it mean to be a Christian?
to believe in Christ.
Is that
to,
all?
to follow Christ.
Is that the only thing that's necessary? Because if so, then
Right, people going around murdering people as long as you believe in Christ.
I believe Christ was a real person. I'm not a mythicist. Does that mean I'm a Christian?
Mm-mm.
No, right. Okay, so wait, there's more. So let's keep going then. What else do I have to do to believe that?
Okay, so the life, death, resurrection of Christ.
Okay,
right. If you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, you will be saved.
Do you have to be baptized like in Peter or in Acts 2:38?
Baptism is not a requirement. See the thief on the cross.
Okay.
There's not anything that you can do, any behavioral modification, any act of service that can stamp your passport into heaven.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if I'm good or bad. I can go to heaven, right?
Well, all of us are bad, right? So,
what if I'm like really bad compared to the average person, though? What if I'm Hitler? Could I still go to heaven?
What if you're running around the early church, murdering, stoning professed Christians? Can you be saved? Yes, Paul was saved and wrote 2/3 of the New Testament.
Out of curiosity,
there's hope for all of us, and he even writes all of this list of things that that a person cannot do and get into the kingdom of God. Drunkards, sexually immoral, homosexuals, the list, and he follows that up with, and such were some of you, but you were washed, right? So if it's up to us, our works are going to take us in the bad direction, in the wrong direction every single time.
Right, so it's not up to us, right? It's up to God.
What? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you don't get to choose whether you go to heaven or not, right?
Do what?
You don't get to choose whether you go to heaven or not, right? God chose that for you.
That's not the whole of the story. It comes back around to your original question.
Is there anything you could do to get your name in the Lamb's Book of Life if it's not in there?
No, otherwise it would be a salvation.
Is there anything you could do to remove
just like every other religious
system?
Book
of Life? Let's assume your name is there. Is there anything you could do to remove it?
No.
So your decisions, choices, actions, and being has no bearing on whether you go to heaven or not. It's all dependent on whether God put your name in the Lamb's Book of Life. No matter what you do in your lifetime, no matter how you act or treat each other, no matter what you say or confess or believe, if your name is in the book, you're getting in. If your name's not in the book, you're not getting in. True or false?
That's an oversimplification. Justin, you want to?
Yeah, and Wes is right. It's an oversimplification because there's two parts in that. There's one, it's like that the fruit that people you're known by your fruit, which is in a sense we're not saved by our works, but our works show proof of the work that's God doing.
Thief on the cross. You just mentioned him. He didn't have any good works.
Well, no, I'm not using the same sense as the salvation sense. I'm saying
we're just going to cherry pick him for this one thing where he didn't have to be baptized, right? But he does have to have good works.
No, I'm saying that shows if you truly believe, and this goes back to the faith and repentance as what you got to do is you have to repent and believe, and that those two things they show for the proof of your life. Now they don't necessarily say,
if you believe like a deathbed confession, you could be a Hitler and then deathbed confession and still get into heaven because your name's in the Lamb's Book of Life. You're going either way.
I think you're taking this to a different direction.
I'm taking it to its logical conclusion here, guys. It's not a trap. It's just the fact. If your name is in the book, you get in. Right?
What's wrong with that?
I'm asking here because I'm kind of setting up the story. The story is you have no morality. It doesn't matter what your morals are.
Well, you're saying it doesn't matter what somebody does. I'm saying that it does matter, and I'm saying that's the point of it because you're judged. There's two things. There's the judgment, right? The great throne judgment, and then there's also the judgment that Christians have on how they live their life. Now, that judgment, the second judgment for Christians, isn't one that sends you to hell, but it does affect as far as like the Bible talks about rewards. So what I'm saying is that in both senses, what you do in this life does matter. But I'm saying under your worldview, it doesn't matter because there's no one actually judging you in the end.
Two things. It does matter because it impacts other people.
It does matter, but
second thing is two things. One, it does matter because it impacts other people that you live with currently. Second thing is the ultimate reward is an eternity with your God. So all other rewards would be vainglorious to the reward of
cool
beginning to spend eternity with heaven. They would be useless and pointless, right?
Because everything we have, including our salvation, is a gift from God, and that's
right. That's my point. So if it doesn't matter,
can I hop in here really quick?
Go ahead.
Well, because you were talking about how you're judged two ways, right?
Christians.
So by salvation, and then your works here on earth. And so Facade is getting to, well, you say your works here on earth, but that's not the one that sends you to hell, that determines your reward in an afterlife, right?
In the sense where, Christians are judged one way and non-believers judged another way. There's one.
No. But I thought you said Christians were judged two ways.
No. What I'm saying is there's two types of judgment. There's the Great White Throne judgment for non-believers, and then there's a judgment for believers, where it does affect how you live your life and stuff, where that's taken into account as far as your faithfulness. The cool part of that judgment is that one, doesn't send you to hell. Two, we actually cast our crowns before God. So the whole thing is
So with Hitler, he could have done everything he did and still have gone to heaven
if he repented and believed, which is actually, it's funny because he did do that, but that actually gives hope to people that if he had done that, he would have been saved. I don't think he did, because there's no
to me, that destroys every incentive, like to do good.
No, it doesn't.
It does. Like
how does it betray any incentive?
Because I could live a life where I literally murdered millions of people, and then I could just pray and confess and say that I'm sorry, I murdered 6 million people because I think the white people are better than the Jewish people, but I'm asking for forgiveness. Please forgive me, and I get into heaven. I have no reason to live a life in which I have any sense of morality or duty to other people, because I can treat them however I want, as long as at the end of my life I confess and believe. Bada bing, bada boom, wipe a slate clean, I get into heaven, I get the best reward of all.
So what's wrong with that?
It's awful justice system.
No need for morals.
No, because the justice was paid already. Like that was taken care of.
But that's that's not justice.
Need
so
with
like
morals.
So justice is
okay. Please tell me what real justice is.
Justice is getting what's due, right?
Right.
So the way you're looking at it, as long as someone pays for the crime, that's justice. Like, so if I go out and murder someone, you could just find a guy and throw him in prison.
That's not it.
That's exactly what substitutional atonement is, right? When you have Christ on the cross, you have somebody who is willingly going. He wasn't sought after. He wasn't strung up. So I go out and murder someone, and someone willingly pays for my murder, and they go to prison. I get to run free.
Nope. Because there's another layer to it, right? You can't chop it up, because it's not just a man paying for man's sins. This is God in the flesh, the same God we have sinned against. So but hang on. You're talking about the aggrieved party, right? The aggrieved party in any crime has the authority to convey forgiveness the way they see fit, right? So if somebody wrongs you, nobody would fault you for harboring ill will toward them, and nobody can fault you for forgiving them and moving on. And this was God in the flesh. That's the scandal of the gospel. This was God in the flesh taking the punishment on himself in place of his people, that they can be saved.
And this is the creed that I said in my opening, because like murder isn't wrong because it harms the murderer. Murder is wrong because it offends God. Because you're saying the aggriever, the victim, gets to decide if they want to allow substitution or atonement, right? So if, in your case, you're saying the victim is God, the aggriever is God, right? But
we have sinned against God. He is the one that we have committed the crime against.
If Facade murders me, he didn't just sin against God. He sinned against me. Shouldn't I have a say in whether or not Facade should be held accountable for murdering me?
Already dead.
Yeah, you're already dead. There is no more you in that situation to convey any judgment.
You don't believe that. You believe there is a me.
Yeah, and
I'm not talking about
I
under your
genuinely hope.
framework. So I die, and my soul is now burning in hell because of Facade. He killed me.
No,
You don't
your
think
soul
I
is not
should have
burning in hell because you got murdered. If you do go to hell, it is precisely because of your own sins.
Well,
the judgment
sure.
is not on you for
I
his
disagree.
action.
But I'm burning in hell a
I
lot
disagree.
faster than I would have. Instead of me sitting at home with my wife watching the movie, I'm in hell.
And this ties
and
into.
I lied. You don't think I should have a say in whether or not Facade should get away with that?
Before we get to this does tie into earlier you saying that it disincentivizes living a moral life in the here and now, because you don't know that you're guaranteed tomorrow. You could be gone before this conversation is over. I pray that it's not the case. I definitely hope not. But you don't know that, right? And so that's part of the urgency of the gospel message and evangelism, is that you can't just assume you're going to live 70, 80, 90 years of evil and then be able to have a deathbed confession, right? You can't presume that, because you don't know that.
I don't mean to keep harping on this, but it's
Come on.
true that if my name is in the book, I get to go no matter what. And I can't do anything to impact whether my name is in the book or not.
And?
So it doesn't matter how I live my life.
It does.
I don't know how to make that any clearer than that itself, because it's so blatantly obvious in my opinion that if I cannot change whether my name is in the book of life or not, it does not matter the life I lead.
We don't have access to whether or not our names are in that book.
I agree, 100%.
But
in fact, no one does. It won't. It won't be there.
Trying to make decisions based upon information you don't have is a fool's errand.
It doesn't matter, because you can't change the outcome. That's my point. In your system, your name is either in the book or it is not. Is that true?
Yeah.
And there is nothing you can do to remove your name from the book or get your name added in. Is that true?
Correct.
Because the book was written and sealed with 7 seals before the foundations of the earth, according to Revelation chapter 11. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if I live a wicked life and kill people and do whatever the heck I want, and it doesn't matter if I'm guaranteed tomorrow or not, because my name is either in that book or it's not in that book, and it's always been in that book, or it was never in that book, and there is nothing that I can do, say, act, believe, think, feel, hope, pray, wish for, work for, or do any other method in order to get my name into or get my name out of that book.
Sure.
You have no reason to live a moral life.
That's false. That's what you call a non sequitur. All of the build up has no connection to the conclusion, because in Christianity, all of that can be true, and the here and now is impactful. It is important, because it matters how you treat other image bearers of God. It matters how you represent God in this life.
It does not change your salvation.
Well, no. It does not impact your salvation, but that's not to say because it doesn't impact your salvation, it has zero impact, period. Right? To say that it doesn't matter how you live now.
Can you take anyone else's name out of the book?
I thought the point was that, so Christianity kind of had an accountability for your actions. That is God who's sending you to heaven and hell, and humanism doesn't have that. But now it seems that you're arguing the opposite, because you conceded Fasad's point that someone's name is in the book or it is not, regardless of what their actions are. So now it seems like
that contradicts that, because I didn't say anything in my opening that would contradict that.
I thought it was at some point one of you had made the point in your opening that you have some sort of accountability, because there's God who's going to judge people's actions, and whereas humanists, we don't have that. There is no reason to do right or wrong. There's no afterlife or whatever, and this doesn't matter.
Well, I think that came in the middle. I think when
saying
something, but
okay,
since we're talking about it, I want to add that Christianity does have a hell. So when we're talking about Hitler and being like Hitler could have prayed and gone to heaven, I don't think he did.
Yes, but you're not going to hell based off your actions. You're going to hell.
Yes, you are.
Based.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
You are going to hell based on
the book.
It is judgment for sin. That's a common misconception.
What about the book?
Time out.
Okay.
What about the book?
You
What
just
about the book?
agreed.
So if your name is if your name isn't so there's a list of names that are in a book that are unchanged, right? And I was there before the Earth's foundations were made, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that means it was there before any actions occurred.
Agreed.
Okay, so the names aren't being determined by people's actions then, because it did not happen yet.
You have better theology than a lot of Christians I've now known. Please continue.
Right.
Well, I mean, that was kind of my whole point. And I didn't want to.
I'm trying to figure out. So if the names are determined by before the actions, people can't be going to hell because of their actions. Go ahead, Fasad.
Yeah, I mean that's why I didn't want to. I mean, I know those actions. They themselves going to be there. They know the quotation marks. But those actions aren't what got him in that. Determine
is definitely a hot issue to talk to the issue of life, which is even.
I'm not. Yeah,
I really want.
Question.
Point wasn't well, but if you're even 7-point Calvinist, the high Calvinist will, then you are aware that there's you can do to change your life, right? So, ultimately, your actions don't matter, but changing salvation or change your own, neither because it's already been predetermined by God for Romans 9. Then none of your actions have error, return, or salvation, or anything else.
Hey,
because
Fasad.
Yeah,
I think we're really bad.
We just big lag.
All of it.
It doesn't matter.
I think.
I had to change my things. I don't know if that's messing with it, but back up. I forgot I installed Raspberry Pi and I DNS in.
We're taking a pause for the call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking like yeah, bro. I'm so bad, and that most of the conversation has been missed. It's very unfortunate, man. Honestly,
Well, the fundamental question: which is better for humanity?
well, yeah. So I think so. The fundamental question. So I think if humanism values, how could you have anything better? It's like a soup. It's like asking better for you. You that's dirt to
Assumption that a worldview, so it's not viable. It's true. It's true and not.
to me like humanism. Like I said, humans, and that's the center of my ethic.
I'm not saying. No, I'm saying the world
value center of my work. That's proper, other than getting something about my.
Exactly. Is
Okay, well, okay, like, okay, I'm just a statement about my belief. I'm not making an ontological statement. Like, unless you want to say that I'm lying, that is wrong. Tell me what if I say
I'm not saying you're lying.
okay, but okay, like saying faith, I like this is an axiological question.
Okay,
And
so if secularism is a purely subjective way to determine what is best for
it's
the
not
self, if it involves you and your particular version is representative of secular humanism, just like
no,
everybody else is secular.
it's not. So and
Okay.
I think see you're looking for an intrinsic morality. That's not what I'm giving you.
No,
I'm giving
I'm
you
not talking about
objective.
morality right now. I'm
Or
looking for consistency in the definition,
so
because
it's
that's fundamentally the point when we talk about whether or not something is true, right? It helps. I'm not going to say it's required, but it helps for it to be clear, for it to be coherent within itself and consistent with what's outside of itself. And what we found in this conversation around secular humanism is a lack of all three. There's a lack of clarity. It kind of bounces around. Is it a ethical framework? Is it for morality, or is it just how you see the world? Right. The lack of coherence is seen in there's no set standard. To your point, there's no set.
What do you mean
standard.
there's no set standard? So okay, so all right.
There's no objective measure to what secular humanism is. You have your flavor of it.
So humanism is an umbrella term, right? And as long as you put humans at the center of your value system, you're humanist, right? That's just the baseline. Now you could talk to certain different humanists, and they have various versions of the way they do their ethics. Some are more sophisticated than others. There's a guy I know, he based his system just off of happiness. That's dumb. I challenged him on that. That didn't make any sense, because somebody could be on drugs and be like, I can make him happy, therefore it's moral. Like, there's a lot of problems with that, right? I'm not doing that. I use well-being, right? And that consists of a bunch of different things. And I'm not saying that I speak on behalf of all humans, but that's just the standard that I use, right? And so I adopted that standard, and I can use that standard to measure actions and see how they conform to well-being. Now, I adopted that standard. Just because I chose that doesn't make it subjective any more than whether I use a ruler to measure a house, or whether I use a yardstick. That doesn't make it subjective. That's not what subjective means.
Agreed. But so two things with that. One, when you say your understanding of morality is based on well-being, well, that is subjective, right? That's what you are choosing to measure, right? It's
no.
Now you can appeal to different understandings of well-being, but you're assuming that you have the capacity to tell well-being. And the naturalistic origins of humanity is trying to believe that we can understand moral goodness in a naturalistic evolutionary framework is like using a mud puddle to tell time. Like you don't have the capacity. There's no way to do that. There's no design. There's no connection between the individual human that on an evolutionary framework has been developed, not even designed, but developed for survival only, to then understand and ascertain truth. Like there's no connection there. That's what I said. You have to assume it rather than prove it.
We're conflating things.
Okay. What's being conflated?
Okay, so you conflated ontology with epistemology, because you said I assume that I'm able to determine what's best or isn't best for your well-being. That's irrelevant, right?
It's an implication of the statement, is what I'm saying.
No, it's not.
So you don't have any way to tell well-being.
I do have a way to determine it, but that's not an assumption built into it. It's just like if I say the speed limit is 55 miles per hour, just because I don't have a speedometer doesn't mean that's not the speed limit. I may not be able to know whether or not I'm driving that speed, but that is the speed limit. So you're confusing epistemology with ontology. I'm making an ontological statement, right? My analytic proposition is that morality is what's conducive to well-being. Period. Whether you know that or not doesn't matter. That's just the standard.
You say that, but where does it come from?
So
like you make a statement of ontology, but you don't have an epistemology that justifies the statement of ontology. That's what I'm saying.
We talked about this last week. You don't need to justify ontology.
No, you don't have to justify ontology. You have to justify your statement of ontology. Like you're the one making a claim about reality.
No, I'm not.
So you have to justify. You're saying morality is tied to well-being.
No.
You have to be able to substantiate that. And
no,
if you don't, then you have to be able to recognize that somebody can dismiss it out of hand.
So there's two types of propositions. You have analytic and you have synthetic propositions, right? Synthetic propositions, right? They describe reality, right? Analytic propositions is just a definition. I'm giving you an analytic proposition. So when I say the word morality, I am talking about what is conducive to well-being. That is how I define the term. So I don't need to justify that anymore than I need to justify the fact that a ruler is 12 inches. Like a foot is 12 inches. And it'll be like you asking, well, justify that statement. No. That is how we define a foot. A foot is defined as 12 inches. That is, so when I say foot,
that's an explanation for it. That is actually justifying the statement.
It's a definition. So okay, so my explanation, when you ask what is morality, when I use this term, I am talking about what's best for well-being. That is an analytic.
As though you can define well-being and that you can identify it.
Doesn't matter if I can identify it, but so when I talk about well-being, I can break it down. So I could talk about, I consider health, wealth, security, freedom, safety, happiness, stuff like that, right?
Why do you consider those? Why are those the standards for your understanding of well-being, and what connects that to your ontological statement that morality is tied to well-being?
That's my analytic proposition. So I define it as that. I could define it as something else. So, and this is why you're calling it subjective. Because I don't think we have an agreement on what subjective is. So, okay, so let's say like on I-95, right? The speed limit the road right outside my house, right? Is the speed limit is 70. Is that objective or subjective?
It is in a sense objective, but we're not talking about. Well, because the people who are beholden to it, right? The local citizens can themselves change it, right? Through city council. Right.
Yeah,
if the local populace is determining the standard that they're being held to, that standard is subjected. It is developed by them. It is subjective. So at the same time, it's a standard that's held to those not involved in the development of the standard. So it's objective for them. If I'm driving through a city that I don't live in, that I don't reside in, that standard is objective to me, but it is subjective to the residents of that jurisdiction.
No. So, all right. So we disagree on the definition of objective versus subjective. So, I mean, I guess looking in any definition, look in a dictionary or a philosophical dictionary, what it's going to come down to is one is mind independent, one isn't. Right. So if I were to tell you that the speed limit is 55 miles per hour, that's subjective. If I were to tell you that the speed limit is whatever you can feel like you can safely drive at, that would be subjective. Right? They're both analytic propositions.
Okay, but we're not talking about speed limits. You're talking about identifying reality, right? If you're going to make a statement about reality as though it's real, as though it applies to me and Justin and Facade and everybody else watching, right?
I'm not making a statement about reality.
Okay, so you're not saying that morality for all of us is tied to well-being.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm good.
It is tied to all of you.
So you're saying that for you, morality is tied to well-being, but for Justin, it can be tied to something else. For me, it can be tied to something else. Is that what you're saying?
You could do that, right? And now we're equivocating. So you could do that, and now we're equivocating. That doesn't make it subjective. Because you could say, when you say morality, Jessica say, when he says morality, he means this. And now we could talk about that standard, and that is objective. Because we're not, if you could, Jessica say, for him, morality is whatever's the heaviest. Whatever's the fastest. So the fastest solution to whatever problem you can have is therefore the most moral. Now you can objectively measure that. You could run into a dilemma, and whatever solution is the fastest, you could just measure the time. Boom, that one is the most moral. That's an objective morality. You're looking for intrinsic morality. I don't do that, and neither can your God.
Okay, but we're
talking about objective morality.
If we make different claims about morality, how, and yours is correct, right? Because morality is tied to well-being, is the analytic proposition that you're putting forth. So if Justin and I say morality is different, you would say that our definitions are inconsistent with reality, right?
No.
Okay, so we can have different definitions of reality, of morality, and they are equally true.
All right, so no.
Equally representative of reality.
All right, so when I talk about morality and I talk about it's conducive to well-being, I'm not making a statement about reality. I'm talking about what I mean when I use a word. So so when I say something's a foot long, I'm saying it's 12 inches. Justin could say that when he says something's foot long, he's saying it is 13 inches. And we can now use that standard and objectively measure things. We could find something that's 26 inches long, and we could say it's 2 feet. Because using his definition, using his analytical proposition, it is a foot is 13 inches. That's what I'm saying. So you're
taking what I would describe as a subjective standard, and you're saying we can apply it objectively. And so if we can apply it objectively, therefore,
at all.
No. What I'm saying, I know, but what I am describing as subjective, you're saying that we can take that standard, apply it objectively, and that ability to apply it objectively is what makes it an objective standard. I'm just trying to get. Okay.
Yes. It needs to be mind independent. So like if you say a foot is 13 inches, and so you can measure something that equals 26 feet, there's no mind needed. You can it's not a matter of opinion. This is 2 feet by definition. Okay. We're not making a statement about reality. We're just talking about how we define words.
So when you say morality is tied to well-being, and Justin and I say that morality is tied to the character of God. Those are two different statements, right? Now we're saying them as subjects, right? But we can apply those standards objectively. We can compare all of our actions to the character of God as revealed in Scripture. We can compare all of our actions into well-being, whatever that means, right? Okay, so but by that standard, you're saying that both of them are objective moralities.
Yours
right?
isn't. Yours isn't.
How is ours not objective?
Because you're relying on an agent. That's God. That God's a mind. He has an opinion. He does things, right?
But he is completely independent of us. It's okay. So,
it doesn't matter.
So you're saying subjective morality being mind dependent. It doesn't matter what the mind is and what minds it applies to.
If you're basing it on the mind, it is subjective.
Okay, so that's helpful because we're talking across purposes if we're using the same words in different ways.
Yes,
right.
That's what
so then the question is, when you make a statement of morality, how would you describe a statement of morality that conforms with reality? Right, that is independent of all of us, but still applies to us.
You see a statement of morality that is consistent with reality.
Right.
Okay, so let me try to explain if I can fully understand the question.
Can you think about it first? And I have a question for Fasad that's been on my mind this whole time.
Okay.
Cut you off. It seemed like a really deep question.
I was about to. I had to answer. But
you're going. You just run with it if you got it. I don't want to cut you off. But.
Okay. Well, what we do, so to answer your question, I have my standard. Now I look at real world consequences. Let's say I whack Justin in the head with a hammer. Right?
Let's do it.
Yeah, right. And so you can look at that and see how it affects the different prongs of well-being that I had mentioned, such as his health, his wealth, his security, his happiness, all that kind of stuff. And you could make objective measurements of that. You could say, oh, he is now less happy because he got whacked in the head with a hammer. So he's hurt, right? You can say he's less healthy, right? Like, because he has a concussion. You can make real world assessments of it. This is literally what we do in medicine all the time. We give when we're testing it, we give some to rats, and we decide what is and what isn't healthy. And then we'll just say, oh, this is the healthy one. Okay, so this is the better medicine, right? So and it's objective. I think that what you were looking for is some sort of intrinsic morality, something where morality is tied to reality itself, or tied just right. And so God does not get you there. God doesn't get you there because
sure he does.
Well, okay. So let's talk about,
because since he's created
mm-hmm.
all things, the universe and all of us in it,
mm-hmm.
within this structure that we would call morality, that's consistent with his nature. It's a standard that's completely independent of us. It's
independent of us doesn't matter. It needs to be independent of a mind.
Okay. So when I am critiquing humanism and saying that it's false, that it's not providing information that's consistent with reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like you would agree with that, at least in a moral sense, because you're not making a claim that any of your moral judgments are intrinsic to reality.
Well, humanism is entirely axiological. Well, at least we're saying
everything's founded on axioms, on presuppositions.
No. I mean axiological as in it's about values. That is necessarily subjective. It's saying, hey, we value humans, so we put them at the center.
Mm-hmm.
There's no intrinsic reason to do that. Logic will not get you there. Reality will not get you there. And that's why I was saying a God wouldn't fix that. You could put God at the center. We're going to say we're going to value God's nature and whatever his decrees are. There's no intrinsic reason to care about that. God can make the rules.
He created us in his image with an ability to understand truth, including moral truth.
And let's say I don't value that.
You don't value that.
Let's say I don't
value the law of gravity and I jump off a building. Am I going to not fall to my death because can't say just value, right?
I'm not saying it doesn't
that's
matter.
The implication. That's the implied piece of the position. Is no reality that's intrinsic to reality.
No.
Okay. So, because kind of do things a little different. Notice the way we talk. I like to ask questions, and AAA likes to kind of brute force in questions to kind of maybe help each other see eye to eye. Do you think that, do you understand AAA's position of outside of a mind being a standard?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I think so. It took a little bit, but I think I came around.
Yeah, let's pretend that we're back in the mobster days, and you have this guy whoever, Al Capone or whatever. Just because he has the biggest gun or the most money or the most power doesn't give him any more rights or credence to anybody else. Just because he's the most powerful, he could be the smartest, he could be the richest, he could be the most powerful, he could have the most guns. There's no reason for you or anyone else to bow down to what he has to say or what Al Capone says or does intrinsically. There's nothing to say, even though he's the most powerful gangster in all the land, that you have any care about what Al Capone does. there's no difference in that scenario and inserting a God that's infinitely more powerful or infinitely more wise. I don't have to value what that God's opinion is. Now, if Christianity were true,
that saying that you don't value it isn't a denial of the consequences.
Right.
You're just saying you just don't value.
That's why you should just let me continue with my talk. If Christianity is true, and God will judge me for my actions or my the way I act or interact with other people or any other reason. Like God could just make up rules and say, don't color outside the lines. And I could just, because I don't care what God says, I can color outside the lines all I want. But that doesn't mean that it's not true or that God's not going to judge me for it. I just don't have a reason to care about what God says because I don't care if God judges me. The same is true. And it doesn't matter if I don't value, if Christianity is true and I don't value an eternity in hell or torture, if I don't have any reason to care about that, then I can live any kind of way I want. The same thing with secular humanism to the extent of, as long as you make it about one person, it doesn't matter. But what AAA does and what I do as well, or try to do, is we base things off of well-being, which is something that can be objectively measured. You could, at any point in time, come along and say, how did this impact this person's health, wealth, well-being, happiness, freedom, security, etc.? And you could say, was it a net positive? If so, then we would judge it as a moral good, like a moral action. And if it's negative or detrimental to that person, for instance, whacking somebody with a hammer, probably bad for their health, if not many other reasons. But when you insert a God there, all you've done is you've catered to the person with the highest, insert whatever, intelligence, power, strength, guns, weapons, etc. And now all you've done is you said, whatever he says is the standard. So if God changes his mind, which he can do, then the standard changes because God's mind has changed. Or if things change over time, because things have changed over time, not to say that his character has changed, but to say that some of the actions that he's requested or commanded in the past don't occur today. Therefore, we know that the actions and requests and commandments of the God of the past aren't necessarily the same ones we see today. All you're doing is appealing to that person of highest power or authority in fear of the judgment that comes thereafter. Whereas in a sense of morality, where you can objectively, no matter where you are in history, examine someone's well-being and determine it to be a net positive or net negative, it is then objective, no matter the time, place, or who commands it.
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying a bit. Is he saying net positive? So is that, would you say that's a good thing then?
We would say it's a moral thing. So things that are moral would well be. Things immoral as well, in my opinion. I don't know if you know that. They don't necessarily impact well-being in any way.
Okay.
Like I could take this cup on my deck. It has no emotions or feelings, and I could crush it, and it doesn't change anything because it's not a sentient being. It's an amoral act. Versus like a moral act, I could be like, I see this homeless dude on the street. I go buy him some food. I buy him a tent. I buy him a sleeping bag. I'm like, here, hook this dude up. That's a moral act because I have, his well-being is going to have a net positive impact because I have fed him. I've given him nutrition. I've given him shelter. I've increased probably his happiness, but I can't say that because I'm not that person. But chances are they would value those things on their own, and you could see the positive benefit of their well-being from an objective point of view. You could say before this dude was just sleeping on the ground. Now he has a sleeping bag, or sleeping out in the rain or under the bridge. Now he has a tent. Or before he was starving to death and now he has food. Right? But if God says go and kill these people during this time, then it's literally just dependent on what God says at that time. So it's literally subjective to God in a moment to a particular people.
Essentially, we're basing the standards off of what God's value, over what God values. Values are by definition subjective. It's what somebody finds important. So if you put it on any person's values, including a God,
or
then,
yours.
Yes.
So no. So okay. So it's not. So if you can say that
AAA.
Here's the difference.
Pause there.
Here's the
pause.
So what?
I don't think you
I cut out.
understood or rejected what you think you just did.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I could be mistaken, but
I left for a few minutes and I may have.
He said it's like if it's like changed to subjective to like a God, and he said or yours. If it's strictly your value,
sure,
you'd
if
agree,
it's my
correct?
standard,
Okay, just making
that
sure
would,
we're all on the same
if I
page.
was a standard, then yes, that would be subjective, definitely. But it's not. Well-being is.
Okay, but aren't you
thank you.
standard in your position?
No, no, I'm not the standard. So just like if we were to measure a house to see how long.
Well, because you said, but you based off of well-being, and you said well-being is different. Could be different.
Well-being, no. Because I misunderstood you. That's what Facade cut me off because I was rejecting something that I misunderstood. Well-being's the standard. I'm not the standard. In your system, God is the standard. In my system, I am not the standard. Well-being is.
But
well-being
whose
is,
understanding of well-being?
And so
because
that's
you're picking and choosing certain aspects.
No.
Okay, so who's picking and choosing the aspects?
Well, reality itself.
Like reality itself. Okay, so how are you ascertaining what specific qualities that reality has chosen for this category of well-being?
So
that gets into the epistemology and how you justify your claim to
yes, but if we're talking about objective morality, ontology is the only thing that matters. It doesn't. Epistemology is totally irrelevant if we're talking about objective morality. That's all that matters. It's just
that's
ontology.
Not entirely true though, because if you're going to make a statement about reality, you've got to be able to justify that. Or
but whether it's just
if you, for example, in this debate, right? Mm-hmm. If we cannot articulate a truth claim, something that matches reality, in a way that you can understand and agree with the reasoning, then you have every
truth.
I'm not saying that. You have every justification to reject what we say about reality.
Sure, and I could. Okay, sure.
And so what we're saying is that you're not articulating any moral claim that attaches itself to reality, which you call intrinsic morality. Mm-hmm. Your position makes no truth claims. So in my opening, when I say there is no truth,
what do you mean?
Can't account from truth.
No. Hold on. When you say the position makes no truth claims, I make a ton of truth claims. I'm talking about what is the center of my axiology, right? The center of my value system would be humans or sentience, right? That is subjective, right? Axiology. We're talking about values here. All right. So I value that subjectivity. I value humans, right? That is totally objective. All right. No, it's not. I am flustered here. Okay, I'm sorry. I said I put humans. I put humans at the center of my ethical system, right? Of my value system. Okay, and I base actions on how it affects them, right? Whether or not I understand how those actions affect them is totally irrelevant to how it actually does. I could whack you on the head, and it would be immoral because it would violate your well-being. Even if I didn't know it, even if no one knew it.
Go. Sorry, I thought you were done.
well, that's what I was gonna say. So like, so even if you talking about how you couldn't articulate your point, then I would be rational for rejecting it. Sure, not understanding a proposition is a really good reason to reject it, but that has no bearing on the veracity of it. It either is or it is not, regardless of whether or not I know it. And that's why I was saying. So we're talking about objective morality. Ontology is the only part that matters. Epistemology is important. That's how you apply it. But it doesn't affect.
Well, it's not just how you apply it, it's how you can justify the statement itself of ontology. So when you say morality is tied to well-being, you're correct that you don't have to know necessarily what well-being is, but you're making a claim of reality, an ontological claim. Morality tied to well-being.
No.
You're not.
I'm not. I'm giving you a definition.
No sense. So this is all inside AAA's head.
No,
right?
I'm giving you a definition. So
what does that definition apply to, though? Is it?
It's a ruler is 12 inches. Is that a foot is 12 inches long? Is that objective or subjective?
I don't understand the relevance of the question.
I'm
that's a
drawing a
quantitative
comparison.
question. We're talking qualitative.
Okay,
right? We can't equivocate between quality and quantity.
We're not equivocating. They're actually directly analogous. So if I say your foot is 12 inches, is that objective or is that a subjective? Am I making a statement about reality if I say your foot is 12 inches? No,
I don't really know how to answer it.
Okay. Well, the answer is
no.
The answer is no. A foot is equal to 12 inches. That is an analytic proposition. There is no such thing as a foot or 12 inches. There are things that exist that equal a foot. There are things that exist that equal 12 inches, but there's no such thing as a foot or 12 inches. Those things do not exist. And
so you would say well-being then is the objective category, or is the category that the ontological category. I mean. That addresses reality. Like well-being is an ontological category, whether we know it or not, right?
So there are acts. There's nowhere in the cosmos could you find morality. Nowhere could you find well-being. There are acts that contribute to well-being, and there are states of mind that are more or less could be defined as well-being. But there's nowhere in the cosmos thus well-being exists any more than a foot exists. When I'm talking about well-being, I'm talking about the experience of a sentient creature.
And on that, I guess I have a question from that. It was one I had for Facade earlier. I'm kind of went a different.
Yeah, be my guest.
So do secular humanists feel guilt?
Yeah, I feel guilt for stuff.
What do you do with the guilt?
It depends on a person.
Depends on what the guilt is for.
Some of us go to therapy. I'll go ahead, Facade. Go ahead. I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the guilt is for and why I'm experiencing it. If I feel guilty over, like, maybe I said something that offended AAA, I may have a conversation with him about why I said it or when I said it or how I was feeling when I said it. And that doesn't justify the thing that I said that offended him, but it can kind of put him in the framework of, hey, I have a lot of this stuff going on and I said this because of this, or I did this because of that. And it hurt your feelings. I see that. I apologize. I will do my best in the future not to do that again. Because AAA and I have been friends for going on 30 years now, and I can tell when something's off between the two of us. I'll easily pick that up, and we can have that conversation as adults. And because I don't want to hurt his feelings, or because I don't want to have this qualm between us, I will make intentional actions not to go down that road again. Now, that may not be the same if it's just a stranger, and I bump into some kid who's carrying his ice cream cone, and his ice cream cone falls on the ground. I might just be like, "Here, kid, here's a couple bucks. Go buy a new ice cream cone." It's not the same thing. But there is guilt.
Yeah, I think that's natural.
So essentially, make some kind of one for one reparation or?
I mean,
one...
there is. I don't think there's a one for one reparation because I can't experience the same thing you do in the same way you do. However, I can do my best to rectify it in any way I can and try to prevent myself from doing it again.
Okay, so to deal with the issue of guilt, it's to just try to just not do it again, to be better.
Yeah, there's no official humanist answer to how to deal with guilt. But yeah, so like Fasad's a good person. I try to be a good person as well. With various things, depending on what the guilt is for, do you do different things? So
yeah, I mean like I said,
you can apologize.
It's really
you can
depending
try
on
to
what I'm experiencing the guilt for and how I'm going to determine how I react to it. Because, and it also depends on like the level of, I guess, like atrocity committed that would cause the guilt. If I ran over somebody's foot, it's different than accidentally taking somebody's pen. Like it's a pretty different things.
Okay, and then I guess the only other question I had was earlier. I mean that'd be a great debate too about election. But earlier you kind of painted this book about being the Lamb's Book of Life, and you said, well, if you're here, then it doesn't matter what you do. But isn't that also kind of the same sense? If there's no final judgment, isn't that the same view that secular humanists have? Because in the end, there's no judgment. So what does it matter? Like, what is?
Let me be very clear. Triple A shaking his head no, but I'm going to disagree with him because he takes one stance in a very different way than I do. But I think we're going to agree with what I'm about to say, even though he's sitting there shaking his head no.
Oh, I have one more. One more part of that question is
sure.
If there's no judgment at the end, what does it matter what you do? Because in the end, there's nothing. But the other question, the other part of that question is, then what is driving you to be a good secular humanist?
Yeah. So to answer the first part of the question,
let's explain the question. Think about this question you're asking. He's asking, since there is no God who's going to torture you forever, why be a good person?
Well, I was relating.
That is what you're asking. Okay.
I was relating that back to the kind of fatalism that was being painted with the election view of the Lamb's Book of Life, and so I'm just turning that back to you and saying, well, technically, that your view has the same problem, which I don't think ours is a problem, but same problem in the sense where if there's nothing you can do, in your view, there's nothing judging you. So what does it matter? Like, what is driving you to be a good secular humanist?
Yeah, so it seems to me like we're talking about the questions of values here, and this is where, even though AAA was shaking his head no, I think he's going to agree with what I'm about to say, is that there is no reason for me to value human life. There's no intrinsic reason for me to value human life. Just like there's no intrinsic reason for you to value, if there is a God, for you to value him or what he says. Now, if you're afraid of his judgment or you fear his judgment, you may abide by his rules in order to attempt to escape it. Right? And if there is a God that is true and that he is going to judge me and I can do something to avoid that judgment and I have a desire to avoid that judgment, I may do so trying to avoid it. I may perform certain actions or tasks or live a certain way to avoid that judgment in fear of the consequences. However, there's no reason inherently for me to say I value human life or I value God's opinion or I value anything else. You're right. You're absolutely right. There isn't one. There is no intrinsic meaning to it. However, there is an evolved value to your own species and the progression of humans in general. And as humans have evolved, we develop things like sympathy and empathy. And the reason that most, not all, there are clear cases of people that suffer from psychosis or other mental issues where they do not care about empathy or they can't experience empathy or sympathy. And I'm not saying those people don't exist or that they're any less human. I'm just saying that on the whole, we have evolved to develop empathy and sympathy. So we care about each other and we want to see each other progress as a whole. I think each person can have their own purpose beyond that nature itself, beyond the nature of sympathy and empathy. I think you can determine your own purpose. And I think that if you determine a purpose that is bigger than just being sympathetic or empathetic towards other humans, you probably will do things that also help progress humanity, like contribute to society, contribute to your neighbors, contribute to your culture, things along that nature. But there's no reason I should value any of those things. There's no inherent reason I have to value those things. So when you ask the question, I think you're trying to, I could be wrong, and it's fine if I am, but it seems like you're almost trying to trap me and saying, well, because there's no inherent reason that you have to believe this, then you can just believe whatever you want. There's no reason to believe in your God either. You can just believe whatever you want. So we just have a value system centered around humanity, likely based off of our evolutionary history, sympathy and empathy, and the way we work with each other to try to progress the human species. You subvert that and insert a God that I don't believe. And you do something beyond that and say that this God can judge you and he can grant you things that are beyond this own life. And to me, that screams danger because A, I can't verify that those things are going to happen, and B, it gives me an out to something that I normally wouldn't have an out in. And what terrifies me is that people, and I'm not saying you guys do, I'm just saying it seems that a lot of Christians, especially around the time of death, have what they call a celebration and instead of a mourning, where they say, we're going to meet again in the future in heaven. And that saddens me because you should value, if you have value for human life and each other and other humans, if you have family, friends, people that you love or care about, if those things exist, you should value them while they're here. Because as far as I can tell, this is the end of the line. And if you spend your life thinking that there's going to be an eternity where you're going to get reunited with those people, or you spend your life thinking that there is some end game in which I can live forever and I can be wiped away of all my crimes here on earth and all the atrocities I've committed, because this magical being in the sky with infinite power and wisdom can wipe his hand and wipe the slate clean, then to me it seems that you don't have a good reason to live a moral life, because that slate can be wiped clean and there's no reason that it shouldn't be. And second, you have this eternal life that you're going to get to spend with the people that you love and care about. So you might not value it as much as someone who thinks that you only got one go at it. So to me, it's a dangerous thing.
We do value it as a Christian. We do value it because not only are we judged by it, but also it's part of our faith is that we walk that out. So both it's on our mind at all the time and we're judged by it. But Mike, I asked that question not to entrap you on something. I'm like generally curious when you compare two things, even though earlier we're like, oh, we shouldn't compare these two things. But that's what the debate is, comparing, which one's better for people or for the world. And so I guess when I asked about the guilt stuff, is like, how do you, just getting down to the brass tacks for the person listening to be like, okay, say I want to be a secular humanist, but how do I deal with guilt? And
yeah, I think the long and the short is that when it comes to secular humanism, we've pointed out over and over again that we have an objective moral standard that will apply no matter the time or the location or the race, ethnicity, etc. of the person, because we're looking at well-being no matter what. Whereas in the situation of your God, and not to be crude or not to mince meat here, but the truth of the matter is your God plays favorites.
Don't do it then if you're going to say but.
Your God plays favorites. We know this for sure. We know there are people that God has made specifically to be vessels for destruction, such as a Pharaoh. We know that God specifically has a chosen people, the Israelites, like according to your Bible, right? We know God has favorites. Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated, right? We know this is a fact. So depending on God's opinion or feeling towards that person or group or nation or the time that it was going on, or pick your whatever you want to insert there. We have a subjection to his demeanor at the time. Whereas if you're looking at a standard for morality and we say that standard is objective based on well-being, even if we can't see the full picture of what well-being is, we can still say it is not contingent upon a mind. And so when you're asking the audience or you're asking people that may watch this, which of the two is better, if you're looking for one that is truly objective, it's not the one that you have to determine if God said something and if it was during this time and if it was to this people group, or if it was, metaphorical, or if it was supposed to be taken as a prophecy, or you don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops. You just say, is it good for is it good for well-being? If the answer is no, then it's considered immoral. If it's good for well-being, then it's considered moral. If it has no impact upon well-being, amoral. End of story.
I want to jump in here too. So we're talking about so what's best for humanity, and I had made the point earlier that how humanism is literally tied to humanity because it puts them right at the center. So it is, imagine a suit being tailored for humanity, whereas Christianity is a suit that's kind of tailored towards God. And so if you have a suit that's tailored towards someone else, it may fit you pretty well, but it's not going to be the best. And so and we see issues with this, like even in the Bible, like for instance, like people who died and went to hell, like people who Saad had mentioned, like God playing favorites. He picked someone to judge. He picks someone, he makes them for a dishonorable purpose, a vessel of destruction, and then send them to hell. That can't be what's best for their well-being. The best thing for humanity can't be to go to hell. You see what I'm saying? So that's
well, I see what you're saying.
Right?
If you guys, I know we keep come back on debates, so I'm glad that you guys had us back. But I think this is all more of an election conversation, which would be it's its own subject. Is how deep that. That's just. But I ask those questions because it's just like if I came to you and I said I want to be a secular humanist, I'm just getting down to brass tacks. How do I deal with my own guilt about the things that I've done or am going to do or have done in my life? And as far as how that plays out, if I'm the one who's deciding these things based off of wellness, what do I do with my guilt?
So,
what would you?
So, humanism, for its epistemology, it promotes science. So you're gonna go out, you're gonna do some science. You're gonna figure out what's a good way that you can personally cope with that. You can go seek help, some professional help, therapist, psychologist, whatever. And then but you're medical, whatever that is, but you're using science to do that. You're like you do a thing and you can assess the consequences of that thing and then say, does this get me where I want to be? No, then do something else. If it does, then keep doing that. That's essentially what science would be. So that is how you would do it.
So I would have to appeal to
him. Let me ask you this one, to kind of turn the tables here.
Well, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I said I would have to then appeal because you said so. If I have guilt, I have to go to somebody else.
You don't have to go to somebody else. But what I'm saying that it has a scientific basis. So if you could figure it out on your own, great. If you can't, get help to do it. But
what is I have to appeal to someone else to help me understand.
You have to appeal to someone else's mind, you're saying, to help you understand?
Yeah, the scientist.
Sure, yeah, not just their mind, but you're relying on expertise.
So why is relying on God wrong then?
Ultimate expertise.
We're not talking about whether it's right or wrong. We were talking about whether it's objective. So that's what that conversation was about. So we're saying if something is deemed moral, immoral, based on God's opinion, It's not objective. It's not objective. Not saying it's right or wrong. We're just talking about objective versus subjective. So if you're saying that killing the Amalekite babies and stuff was okay because that's what God wanted, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying it's not objective. That's what I was talking about. So we're kind of like changing the dialectic here, because the discussion was objective versus subjectivity, not right or wrong. If you're defining it by what God's mind wants, then it would be by definition right, according to your analytical proposition. But I reject that because it's not objective.
I'm just trying to be practical here. So I was just like, if I have guilt, there's no official position from the secular humanist, but if you do have guilt, you should go see a scientist. It'd be a scientific basis. So it's a scientific basis where like anybody can do science. Okay. Like if I want to figure out what's better, I have a baby and I want to figure out what's best for this baby. Is it better to give the baby a hug, or do I whack it in the head with a brick? I can do both and see the response. But
that's a scientific basis.
But why do people feel guilt?
But I mean, I think it's a evolutionary response. I mean,
something wrong, right? So then I have to go to somebody else, and that person has to tell me.
Yeah, it's called a parasympathetic response to get to really deep dive into like the neuroses here of how brains work. Essentially, we determine, or like most humans experience guilt, not all. Most humans experience guilt when they recognize, and like what they would recognize as an injustice, an imbalance, or something improper with other humans or other sentient creatures, right? And even if it's by your own accord or by your own hand, if you will, then most of the time you feel guilt because you've quote unquote committed this injustice yourself. So when you're looking at things like, there's a bunch of experiments with rats because rats are cheap and their brain patterns are surprisingly close to the way humans work. In fact, they're the smallest mammals that can experience laughter. But like when you do experiments with rats, if you lock one of them in a tiny cage where you can't get out and you offer the other one food, why does he go and get his buddy out of the cage before he decides to eat? There's no reason, like intrinsically, for that to happen. But rats do it. In all cases, they go and get their buddy out. It's just natural. So it's an experience of empathy, because if they were in that situation, they would want to be released. It's really fascinating, but
I'll definitely look into that. But that didn't really answer. Wes, do you want to hop in there for what we're talking about? Because that didn't really answer my question, but now I'm interested in looking at rats.
Lots of studies on them. They do studies on bunnies for stuff that has to do with your eyes, because bunnies don't have tear ducts.
I want to do a time check to make sure that both of y'all are good. Usually we only go an hour and a half. My little girl's hair is getting braided, so I have all day. Are y'all good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, can I flip the script real quick?
What's that?
Can I flip the script?
Come on.
So, let me ask you this. From a Christian perspective, if I suspect my wife has been cheating on me, and that she might be pregnant with another man's child, what should I do about it?
You should probably talk to your wife.
But that's not in the Bible, right? That's not what the Bible recommends, is it?
Actually, it is, because husbands are supposed to love their wives as Christ loved the church, wash her in the water of the word, and that would come with a line of communication, which also involves the wife submitting to her husband in a proper way and not stepping out. So if there's a fracturing, if there's suspected fracturing, I would say that, the communication between you and your wife probably needs some work on it, because if you're even to that point, then there's not the unity that should be there between husband and wife.
So, Wes, I think you know exactly where we're going, because we're talking about Mosaic law, and maybe because Facade said according to the Christian's perspective.
Yeah, come on.
And that is Mosaic law, not Christian, right? So we're just it's a
no.
different
I mean, the Old Testament's a Christian book too.
Sure. Okay. Cool. So why did God give humans different instructions? in regard to that. If you suspect that your wife is cheating, you can just take her to the temple and make her drink the magic dust juice.
I'm gonna use the talk about that.
Okay. So as you bring this up, Fasad, what's the nature of the question here? Where are you getting to
you're asking
the pro-life aspects?
No, in general, you're asking secular humanists to have this textbook, if you will, or this document, or this standard of protocol in which we respond to certain circumstances, right? And in his case, he was asking me, in what method should I act in regards to my own guilt, right? And I said, there's no standard textbook for secular humanism regarding guilt, right? I don't know of one. I don't think there is one. I've never read one, but I still consider myself a secular humanist, right? However, you guys have a book that's supposed to dictate your own morals.
It's
and
fantastic.
standards. Yeah, so I was asking specifically, what do you do about an adulterous woman? Because your book tells you that you should take her to the temple, and the priest should sweep the dust up off the floor and mix it with holy water and force her to drink it. And if she hasn't been cheating, she'll become barren. But if she has been cheating, she'll become barren and lose the child. Do you say that, is that the recommendation you would give to anybody that was trying to look into Christian culture if they came to you and said, hey, I was really thinking about becoming a Christian. I was wondering how you would handle a cheating wife. Because that's exactly
I would
the question
not recommend that, because that's not appropriate for modern Christian culture anyway. And that's one of the faults that many non-believers have, of which y'all would be included in that. It's a failure to simply read the text. For example, what temple are they going to go to? There's not
a local temple.
You can't take somebody to a temple that's not there anymore. Right? So I mean, just the basic fundamental aspects of the situation, you overlook, and you want to focus on the drinking of the dust and the water, when what's clear from that passage is the difference is not what the dust does to the woman, it's God's judgment. And you miss that completely in the way you read the text. And the way we handle guilt is not unlike how Old Testament saints handled guilt. They did not have Jesus in their rearview mirror, so they hoped in the coming Messiah. We have the empty tomb in our rearview mirror, so we can rest on a completed salvation, and we can look to Christ, trust in Christ for our salvation, and any sin that we have committed, whether it's adultery, whether it's drunkenness, whether it's any other type of sin. If we have the grace and mercy to be alive and have breath in our lungs today, there's an opportunity for repentance. So that's what we do with our guilt. We go to the cross. We take it to the cross. Jesus paid it all. It is finished.
But not to be like a complete jerk here, but you have to really extrapolate and kind of make your own interpretation of Scripture to get any what it. I don't think cheating.
Put it kind of.
So and I'm that. So, but
refer the
issue that I have is that solution is never appropriate.
You can't make assertion. You have to do that.
Well, because
you say it violates well-being. The secular humanist scope of well-being is too small. It looks to well, you disagree. Therefore, I'm wrong. That's the same kind of appeal to personal authority. It's the same thing over and over again.
I'm not appealing to authority.
Let's just ask the question
what we're looking at.
Ask.
So if the water, the dust water is going to do irreparable damage to her body and destroy the baby. So
okay. Y'all clearly don't have a problem with destroying babies.
No. So
we established that earlier.
No, here's the thing. So like when we talk about abortion, there's a we're talking about bodily autonomy, and that's why I didn't want to jump into there, right?
Yeah.
However, with this situation with the dust water, it's not bodily autonomy. The woman's being forced to have an abortion. So the woman,
you assume autonomy. Where do you get autonomy from? There's no sense of autonomy in the anthropology of a secular humanist. You have to assume that. You have to assume agency and autonomy.
No,
you can't derive that.
So that is part. So when we talk about well-being,
the circular reasoning of the secular humanist, you have to assume it. Therefore, you can use it and then justify it because
it's not an assumption. It's a definition. So when I talk about well-being, how is that? Where's the
where are you getting the definition from? You just say it is, and there it is. Right?
Yeah, I say yes.
Let me go back to
I made
the
it
point
up.
of the foot.
All right,
right?
I made up the definition.
You are God. You spoke it into existence, and there it is.
No. I'm giving you a definition. I'm telling you how I define something. I'm not making a statement about reality.
Right. How you define it. That definition is limited necessarily to you, and you don't have the authority or the power to
it's not about
definition to anybody else.
It's not about authority
because your understanding of reality is limited to your own mind.
No,
that's one of the problems with secular humanism.
Bro, if I take a foot and measure something, if I take a ruler and measure something and say it comes out to 9 inches, right?
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with authority.
But when you try to tell me that a foot is 9 inches, you're trying to impose that measurement on me, and I'm going to say no. It's 12 inches.
No. I'm saying
that's what's happening here. You're saying
that's not what
your
I'm doing.
Standard is the way it is.
So,
and I'm saying you don't have a way to know that.
Okay,
you don't have a mind that's geared toward truth in a secular humanist worldview.
So when I say that the drinking dust water is a forced abortion. So I say it violates bodily autonomy. It violates the health of her body and everything, right? And I say that by my analytical proposition, that is immoral. Where's the circle?
Because you're saying it's immoral, right? You are establishing the judgment. You are conveying the judgment, and you have authority to do so. You're assuming your ability to convey the moral judgment. It's not about you can convey the moral judgment.
It's not about authority here. This has nothing to do with authority. Sure
it is. You're the one making the claim. You're the one standing and saying this is what's true. And now, just for clarity's sake, I brought up the actual passage, and it's in. If anybody's interested in looking it up, it's in Numbers 5, and it says, the priest shall have the woman stand before the Lord and let down the hair on the woman's head. And the priest shall have her take the oath. I'm skipping down a little bit. And the priest shall have her take the oath and say to the woman, if no man has had sexual relations with you, and if you have not gone astray into uncleanness, as you are under authority of your husband, be immune to this water of bitterness that brings a curse. There's no harm to the woman.
If she didn't
if she didn't cheat, if she maintained her fidelity,
that's irrelevant.
Are you aware?
To me, that's irrelevant.
Even if he got it wrong in the description of the situation, he said it makes her barren anyway.
Let me ask you something.
Hold on, reading the plain black and white.
Let me ask you something real quick. Are you aware how they used to judge witches to be witches?
Say again?
Do you know how they used to test if witches were witches?
Why don't you tell me?
Okay, so they used to take and tie them to boulders and throw them in water. And if it was a witch, they said the witch would float, which would indicate she's a witch. And if they weren't a witch, they would sink to the bottom.
Yes.
Is that in the Bible?
This has nothing to do with that.
It is not.
There is witchcraft in the Bible, according to Saul.
But did they tie rocks around them and drown them? I mean, it just seems
not relevant to the Bible. This is just a random question. I was asking if you knew how witches were determined, right? The problem with determining if it's a witch or not, because there's no such thing as witches, is that all the women they tied rocks to and threw them in the water drowned. So if I make a poisonous concoction and I tell you to drink it, and unless you're a witch, you're going to survive, then you're going to die because it doesn't matter. The same is true for the situation of the woman in the temple. They're making a poisonous concoction for her and telling her whether she not.
This of the Bible, and you want to bring philosophical understanding when it's not. But the disagreement is it's not between the and reality. It's clearly A, then B. If C, then D. Right? Those are the two options. Right? If you've been faithful, no big deal. If you haven't, consequences. Right? And so you're saying that necessarily everybody is in the camp. There's nothing in the second camp. There's nothing in the text that indicates that would be. You're bringing that and imposing it on the text, and that's out of bounds. You can't read that
let me
way
ask you something.
by saying,
like,
I'm going to bring this in, and whatever I think it means, therefore that is what it means.
Do you think that if I made a cup of poison and I presented it to you and I said, if you drink this, you won't die as long as you're named Wes, is there any reason for you to believe that? Right. And so the only difference in that proposition and the one mentioned in Numbers 5 is that you think this priest can somehow know the woman hasn't cheated on her husband, and the magic dust that he puts off the tabernacle floor is somehow going to not do the damage it would had she been an infidelitous wife.
It's amazing that the one difference that you put there isn't even justifiable in the text. There's no indication that the priest knows. Never mind the fact that in your situation,
the magic dust
you're not a
knows,
priest. I'm not accused of being an unfaithful wife. And in your situation, you have made poison, right? You know you've made poison, right? So there's plenty of differences, and you overlook all of them, and you say, no, the real difference is the priest knew. No.
He shall take
the one that knows, and the agent in the
jar.
issue here is God.
He
God is the one who brings judgment. If that baby is conceived in adultery, it is God who is presenting judgment on that woman.
Numbers 5:17. He, the priest, shall take some water and a holy water in a clay jar, and put some dust from the tabernacle floor into the water. And if the priest has had the woman stand before the Lord, he shall loosen her hair, place her hands, a reminder of offering of grain offering for jealousy, while he accursed water. That's poison. No. There's no if.
So here we go. We're adding to it.
There is no if there.
Everything you read, tell me in there, where does it say the priest knows?
It doesn't matter whether he knows. He knows it's cursed water. It says so right here.
I know, but that's not an issue. You said the difference was the priest knows whether the woman's been faithful or not. And I'm asking you to show me where in the text. You can't even get that right. How can you be expected to get the implications of a text right when you can't get the text
itself? It doesn't matter
right?
if the priest knows. The point is the same, Wes. Does the priest know? Does the water know? Does God know? It doesn't matter. If I'm making cursed water, it's cursed water.
And because there is a God who will preserve his people and who is a just God, if she takes this bitter water...
Why do you think he's going to preserve his people, or that he's just?
Because he said so.
When he flooded them all in Genesis?
He did not flood these people. You're mixing up.
It's subjective to this
Genesis
particular point in
time.
Right?
You're looking in Numbers. We are centuries ahead of the flood, and after the flood, he promised he would never do it again. Has he? I don't see any flood. Right?
Well, I don't see good evidence.
He's aces on that promise. Right?
Yeah, I don't see good evidence.
But it's the same thing. You can't get the basic text right. So you're going to get the implications wrong, and all of that is immaterial.
The basic text says it's cursed water.
Your judgment only makes sense in your own mind, right? You're not taking into account the God who created all of us, who has directed history, and who preserves his people, and who has the ability to protect a woman from dying or adverse effects to her body at all if she drinks poison.
So I want to jump in here. So
go for it.
the issue that I'm having is that, so let's say she did in fact commit adultery, and then that's when the miracle happens. So it's a child by miracle, right? Whether if it's
child by miracle from adultery.
Yes, yeah, child by miracle. We're talking about, like, so God is intervening into reality. So I mean, I don't take a miracle to mean always a good thing.
Okay, I got you. His supernatural intervention.
Yes,
not that the child itself is a miracle.
Yeah, no, not the child, but God is intervening, intervening based on their actions, right? So let's say the woman did actually commit adultery. So I say it is immoral for to have her be forced to have an abortion. All right. So I'm saying that because it does not fit my definition of morality. Where's the circle?
There's not a circle there. It's a meaningless appeal to authority. You're not involved in that situation. Who are you to say what's right for the woman?
So it has nothing to do with authority. So, like, because I mean,
you're making a claim of morality, or in this case, immorality, right?
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with authority. Just like if I take a ruler and measure, and you say you came out to 6 feet tall, and you say, well, what authority do I have to do that? Like, nothing. Authority has nothing to do with it. You meet the standard. That's just what you are.
So that's God's standard and your standard. And you're saying your standard should apply because your standard is better than God's, and because it's better than God's, it should apply. And it should apply because it's better than God's.
No. There's no oughts. All right. I'm not saying my standard should.
You're saying is as though it's self-evident.
No.
It's clearly not.
No. I'm not saying my standard should apply and God shouldn't. I'm saying my standard is objective and my standard is better for humanity. There's no oughts here.
But you don't have the necessary components of yourself to be able to make that claim and for it to be binding on reality.
What are the necessary components that I need?
Other time in history.
What are the necessary components that I need?
Well, I mean, for one, you need to have a mind period, right?
The mind is irrelevant. So what I'm saying.
Okay. Also, like, you want to ask for an answer to the question, and then you're going to automatically deny. So that goes back into the appeal to personal authority. I don't think that matters. Therefore, it doesn't matter.
Point out
so no. So what I'm talking about is we're talking about an ontological statement, right?
Yeah.
We're saying that. Okay, I'm saying that something is equal to 6 feet because that's what the ruler showed, right? And you're saying, but what if I don't have a mind? Is it still equal to 6 feet? The answer is yes. Because that's what it means to be 6 feet. That is the definition that I'm using. So when we're talking about this forced abortion, it is immoral because that's what it means. Whether or not I have the mental capacity to assess it is irrelevant to its ontological and moral status.
But you're making a claim of ontology that you can't justify.
What's the ontological claim?
You're making the ontological claim that it's immoral to coerce that woman into an abortion.
Yeah, because it meets the definition.
You're going back into history. So you're making a claim that stretches through time and says that these people are wrong. A situation
that's what objective morals do. And that's what yours doesn't. That's a great point. Objective morals, they're not bound by time.
So this objective morality, we're not worried about. No,
it's not subjective.
I'm saying the distinction between subjective and objective, we've already agreed that we've clarified that. I'm not talking about subjective and objective. My whole case has been humanism does not provide truth, like that adheres to reality, right? Christianity does. Christianity makes claims that are true. Regardless of what time you are, regardless of who you are, there are claims that Christianity makes, including moral claims, and they are binding on the fabric of reality. So, right? And we've already agreed secular human doesn't do that on your view. And what you're attempting to do,
neither one of those do those things. Neither one of those things.
Sure, they do.
You said it's binding on humanity. Yeah. It's binding on reality. How is it binding on reality?
Because it doesn't matter where you live, or what your circumstances are. The morality that we have is reflective of God's character. And
but that doesn't make it binding on reality. I just don't understand.
So in a similar way that we talked about before, the laws of logic, they govern thought. That's limited to creation. The laws of science, physics, right? That is how creation or how the universe holds itself together. The moral fabric is similar in that. It's not. I mean, it's like logical laws, physical laws. You can't grasp hold of them.
You're making.
I'm making a claim about ontology. I'm making a claim about the nature of morality.
You're making a synthetic proposition.
Well, you call it whatever you want to, but
that's what it is. You're making a statement about the nature of reality. And correct. I am not. So we're talking about justifications here. Like you would need to demonstrate that to be true. I don't need to demonstrate something to be true because it's just a definition. Right. Definitions aren't true or false through definitions. They're not proper. It's not a.
So that's where the comparison between Christianity and secular humanism here, I think, is weighted in favor of Christianity, because by your own assertion, secular humanism is not providing any truth claims. It's not giving you anything. You're trying to attach things.
I didn't say secular humanism isn't providing the truth claims.
You haven't demonstrated. You've argued against any intrinsic moral character for these moral judgments, whereas Christianity provides a stable, consistent framework for morality that is prescriptive and corrective, that can actually help us in this moment.
Hold on. No, so here's the problem. Because you criticize mine for not being intrinsic, but then you said yours is like consistent and blah blah blah. You didn't criticize it on a point that it's not intrinsic. Yours isn't intrinsic.
My criticism is the fact that it's not true, and that's a point that you haven't argued against.
It's like saying that a foot is 12 inches. It's like saying that isn't true. That is the definition. Truthfulness, truth, that is a property of a proposition, specifically synthetic propositions.
It corresponds to reality.
Yes. All right. So when we talk about a definition, definitions need not correspond to reality. I could say a centaur is a half man, half horse. That is the definition. A centaur does not have to exist.
Okay, so I am making claims and putting them in this bucket called truth that correspond with reality. That's the claims that I'm making. You are not putting any claims of secular humanism in a bucket like that. You're putting them in a bucket that's definitional. That doesn't have to.
No. So
you're making definitions that you yourself indicate are not connected to reality.
Definitions aren't connected to reality.
That's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you.
That's how definitions work.
Okay.
That's how analytic propositions work.
Right.
You're not making
the
claims
overall
about
moral
reality.
claims.
You're just defining terms.
Right. So and that's the whole point. You're not providing anything that connects to reality by your own assertions.
Why is that a problem?
I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm saying that's a characteristic of your case. I'm saying that because Christianity does, there's a transcendent nature to that, and that the Christian claims are not only true, but are also useful. Therefore, Christianity is better in this specific case. This is how definitions work. Like, in order for us to have a conversation about God, we'd have to define them. And then once we define God, we can talk about him. Regardless of whether or not God. Why doesn't God get to define himself?
Well, anybody could define it. If God could define himself, then sure, that would be the analytic proposition. That would just be the definition. It doesn't matter whether it exists or anything.
Okay.
If you're saying you believe in that, then that is your definition, and I can accept or reject that definition. But we have to do that first to talk about it. But it's not intrinsic. There's nothing intrinsic about morality that is tied to it's not that isn't tied into the fabric of space-time. That's not how that works. That's not how any of that works.
Yeah, come on, Justin.
You said that we have to define terms before we can talk about it. I don't remember you guys defining God once, but you definitely brought him up quite a bit. Jumping over that real quick.
We assume that we had a common definition. Like we don't have to define it. Like we didn't for practical purposes, we don't define every single word that we're talking about. So like if I say before, I don't have to go into a sequence of how time works, right? You know what I mean by that. But it is defined. It's just
like wellness or objective and stuff like that. We do have to define.
Well, we did have to define that because we're on different pages. You thought objective meant intrinsic. That's not what that word means. Objective and intrinsic are different things. The speed limit.
We're redefining it for the context of this conversation.
Because
that's what definitions are, right? They don't actually.
But philosophy in general, that's not what that word means. The objective speed limit of 95, right by my house, it is 70 miles per hour. It is not intrinsic. That's not an intrinsic speed limit. It's just objective. And that is what I claim to give you the entire time. And you were criticizing it based on the fact that it's not intrinsic. Something that I said from the beginning that I'm not claiming to have. You don't have either. In order to have intrinsic,
sure I do.
If you're gonna have to solve Immanuel Kant's hypothetical and categorical imperatives problem.
I don't have to do anything. Yeah, I don't have to do anything with Immanuel Kant. I'm pointing to a God that created all of us.
You're saying
has revealed this to us and has stepped into history, lived a human life, died a death, was raised, and has proclaimed after that, this is reality. Right?
In order
has made claims of reality, and you want to discount that, and that's fine. If you want to do that, you will reap the.
Let's get back to intrinsic here. Let's get back to intrinsic here. If you say something is intrinsic, you're going to have to get an ought from an is. Do you see the problem?
No, because I'm getting the ought from the person who created the is.
Okay, that's a fallacy. That is a non sequitur. Please write that out in a formal syllogism. Give me the ought. God exists. God says murder is wrong. Therefore, you ought not to commit murder. Please write that out. Write that out in a valid syllogism. I would like to see that.
God
it is going to be a not.
So God created all things, established the laws by which all things are governed, revealed to us that one of those laws is what was the specific you wanted me to? Thou shalt not murder. Therefore, murder is wrong because it violates.
No. I want intrinsic, right? So that's because now,
he created morality.
That's not intrinsic.
He created with morality intrinsic.
That's not
to
intrinsic. You're gonna have to give the ought. All you're saying is exactly what I was saying, but you're adding a mind, which removing the objective nature of it. So you're gonna have to get intrinsic. You're gonna have to give an ought.
So
what ought I do? Because God
regardless of you ought to do it because he created you and he instilled within you a moral nature and holds you accountable to that. Okay, so you can shout non sequitur all you want to. It doesn't change the fact.
Okay, that's so. If you have
because the issue with morality fundamentally for you is between you and God. You have sinned against God. You have violated his law that he wrote on your heart that he holds you accountable to. Right? Doesn't matter what you do to any of us nearly as much as what you've done to him. He is the aggrieved party here.
Are we talking about intrinsic morality anymore or not?
I'm talking about reality.
Okay,
right? This is a moral reality. You can call it intrinsic, objective, subjective. You can play all the word games you want to.
No, these aren't word games. These aren't word games. These
this
words.
This is nature.
Okay, but I'm not doing
this
word
is how we were created.
No.
So words are important.
Really off topic. Can I just ask a random question?
It's about the precision, like the precision that the precision and clarity and accuracy that I'm trying to get to this conversation. You're just shrugging it off as a word game, and that's not. You said subjective, objective, intrinsic. Like you could just throw these words around, and they don't mean anything. When you
said that they don't mean anything, but by your own assertions, definitions don't connect to reality. I'm in the bucket of connecting to reality. You're in the bucket of definitions. And what I'm saying, and we agree, those are two different buckets.
You realize definitions define things, whether it
Yes.
exists or not.
Let's go to Facade because he tried to say something.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What do you got, Facade? Sorry, man.
It's super late. We're getting really off topic. This is mainly for the two Christians of the group. Are you familiar with the term hard solipsism?
Is that like
we're the two Christians, right? They're turning in the group.
Like, I'm the only one that
so
exists,
because,
and all of y'all are figments of my imagination, kind of thing.
No, hard solipsism basically says nothing can be known except the fact that you exist.
Okay. We'll adopt that definition for our purposes, whether or not it corresponds to reality. I'm good with that.
I know that exists, but I can also not.
Okay, guys, you got to look this up. Just look up the difference. Look up how analytic. Bro, this is basic philosophy, man. Okay,
I get it, but we've already gone down that road. We're not making progress down that street. It's not going anywhere. So, are you either of you familiar with hard solipsism?
I am now.
Okay. I mean, I assume you probably haven't spent much time thinking about hard solipsism if this is the first time that you've thought about hard solipsism. The question is, what is your response to hard solipsism? How can you be sure anything other than yourself exists?
Justin, you want to take that?
Yeah, how can I know that?
Pass that off. Yeah, I like that.
I saw the blue ring, and I didn't want to talk over him, and I'm kind of thinking through it.
Pass the
yeah.
I like it.
Man, sorry. Okay, so you're saying, can you say it one more time to make sure I got it down? So that I just know that I exist.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, the cogito by René Descartes. I think, therefore I am. That is basically all you can know. Nothing beyond that you can know for certain. So, for instance, you might be, right now, you think you're having a conversation with 3 other people on a podcast, but you could be a brain in a jar, or a simulation in a computer program, or any other, just come up with some scenario. That could be the reality of reality, but your experience is this. How can you be certain that this is?
But are you saying I'd have to appeal to somebody else to tell me, hey, man, you're having a conversation, to know that I'm having a conversation?
Well, I'm asking, like, how can you be certain that you're not just like a brain in a jar that's experiencing this conversation, or a computer simulation, right? Like, the hard solipsism basically says the only thing you can know for certain is that you exist. But you don't even know in what state you exist.
So include hard syllogism then?
What'd you say?
Does that also include the syllogism? If all I can know is that I exist, how do I...
Hard solipsism.
Solipsism.
I mean, again, that kind of goes back to, this is how we're defining it. If all you know is you exist, like that by definition is all you know. Like cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah, so one thing I would say is, much like we've said earlier in the conversation, that the fact that you can trust your own thoughts, if that's true, that means your thoughts are corresponding to external reality accurately.
Yeah,
how do you know they can do that?
Yeah,
like, so there are implicit assumptions to the reasoning process that hard solipsism probably can't account for. Christianity can. Secular humanism definitely cannot.
Well, I'm asking,
how do you solve solipsism?
How do you solve hard solipsism?
I mean, it's false.
How
it's
do
not
you
a problem that needs to be solved.
You said that, but how do you solve it? I got to see your work.
What I mean, how would you prove it? And that's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the question.
So
I don't know
go
that
back
you can
to
prove it. I don't know
if solipsism is true.
I can't solve it.
Yeah. Okay. So whether you can solve it or not.
You said you could solve it. I'm asking, how do you solve it?
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying I can solve it. He asked how I would respond. So I would say that.
Well, you said you could solve it.
Oh, I mean, I did not mean to imply that. If I did, my apologies. I was answering the question, how would you respond to it? But it seems to me that if solipsism is true, and I know that solipsism is true, then my thoughts are connecting to reality in a way that they would not if solipsism is true. So I have a built-in way of recognizing that solipsism is fundamentally false because my reasoning faculties can
Your
be
reasoning
consistent with
faculties are
reality.
being determined by the current status of events, which don't necessarily correspond to reality in hard solipsism.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
I mean,
problem.
as a Christian, it's fairly easy because I'm not alone. There's the God who made me that has revealed Himself to me. So there's another mind at play in
How
my
do you know
ability
let
to
that's
me
know
another
pause
the
you
truth.
real
mind?
quick. If you're a computer program,
Because of the
you've
nature
been
of
programmed
reality.
to think that
But
way.
and I mean,
What is the nature of reality? How does the nature of reality solve that?
I mean, I'm not saying that it solves it because at a certain point there's personal
I
incredulity.
thought that's exactly what you did say.
No,
You said
okay.
you know it's
State,
a different
let me
mind
state as
because
clearly as I can again. I'm not saying that I can solve it, but this is how I would respond to it. You can take that for whatever it's worth, right? Like Fasad said, probably not going to be able to come up with much if this is the first time you're thinking through it. But it ultimately seems like a meaningless exercise. If it's false, then we can discard it. If it's true, then all of this is meaningless anyway, and it doesn't matter.
so it's no. But you can't just disregard it if it's false.
I'm
You
not
have to
simply disregarding it
know
because
that
it's
it's
false.
false before you can disregard it. So he's asking you this is totally in the realm of epistemology.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
so
mean, the
you
reason I
can't
asked this, and the
reject
reason
things
I bring up
based
hard
on true or
solipsism.
false. You have to have a reason for it.
Yeah, and the reason I bring up hard solipsism is because over and over throughout the conversation, you've asserted that we have the laws of God written on our heart. However, if like hard solipsism is a thing, and you're just a simulation in a computer program, you've been programmed to think that, right? And there is no way for you to know
Programmed by who or what? I'm the only one that exists.
Some magic programmer. Yeah, sure. You could be the only one that exists in the program.
Okay, so you want to appeal to magic to undermine the validity of what you call magic.
We're not appealing to it. We're saying is how do you know that's not the case?
Yeah, how do you know it's not some magic being or some super intelligent computer programmer that has literally programmed you to think and talk and act the way you do inside a simulation? There is no way for you to know that is not the case.
So what?
So my problem is that
what does this situation have to say to the conversation? Which is better, secular humanism or Christianity?
So my point is that. Let me go. This is where I was going with that. Is that you keep pointing out things like God has written His law on our hearts, right?
Hey, Fasad.
Yeah.
Hey, hold on 1 second. Hey guys, I'm gonna have to get ready to step out. I got to put my daughter to bed and hang out with the family and everything.
All right,
but
let's call it.
I'm gonna let Fasad take care of the conversation. And,
I say we call it. We give them the last word of the show and then call it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that and pick it up another time if y'all want.
We're almost 3 hours in. Let's pick up another day. Guys, last word of the show always goes to the guest no matter what. You guys have anything you want to say, anything you want to pitch for the last couple minutes, and you guys are free to do so. I'll shut up. AAA is already shutting up to go deal with his family. You guys can have edit, and then I'll wrap up the show. Thank you guys for coming on again.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. One quick thing before I leave. Yes. Thanks, both of y'all for coming back on. I want to get y'all back on. Both of y'all at the same time because y'all fun duo, man. And I like to tackle something specifically. I like to tackle abortion.
Let's do it.
There we go.
Cool. Yeah. We'll be in touch. But all right, guys, I'm signing out.
It's good talking to you, buddy. Mm-hmm. Okay, so last words again. Thank you for having us on. Last words for me, and I'll switch my partner. So get the conversation of which is better, Christianity or secular humanism. I think Christianity offers a coherent worldview. It offers hope. It offers grace, forgiveness, both in this life, and offers an explanation of the human condition and hope for the future and an afterlife. Some resources they give out. Obviously, you can't cover everything in any short amount of period, but I'd say if you're more interested in the subject, I think I actually wrote them down over here, but I'll just go off my mind. Any sermons by John MacArthur, if you're more interested in the exegesis of the numbers of the book we're talking about in the Bible, if you're interested in worldviews and stuff like that, There's plenty of stuff available by Legionnaire Ministries on YouTube. You type in Christian Manifesto on YouTube. It covers a lot of the things we talked about tonight. Just saying that Christianity is a lot of fun, has a lot of answers, and has done a lot of good in the world. And with that, I thank you and turn over to my partner.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, but I think given the nature of our conversation, which is better, secular humanism or Christianity, I think it's been pretty well defined throughout that at least secular humanism does not have meaningful claims to make about the nature of reality. I would say that also includes an inability to justify truth and knowledge as categories, and behaviorally leads to absurdity and wickedness. Christianity, on the flip side, is true. It accounts for truth. It is, by extension, good for humanity. And I would encourage anybody who's maybe on the fence not to listen to Justin or myself, but look to Christ. Open your Bible, read what Jesus has to say. Look to Christ, listen to Christ, trust in Christ, and follow Christ. You will not go wrong if you look at the perfect standard of our faith. So please don't take the words of fallen individuals who are in the process of being conformed to his image. Look to the one in whose image we are being conformed. And with that, thanks again to Facade and AAA for having me on. I look forward to doing this again.
Guys, it was a blast as always. We're going on 3 hours. Thank you guys so much for sticking around this whole time and dealing with us. And I'm sure everybody's a little tired and worn out. Real quick before we just wrap up everything, huge shout out to everybody in the comments. Sorry we didn't get to a lot of questions. We were obviously just kind of back and forth the whole time, but next time these guys are on, which we'll definitely have them back if they're willing to come back, we'll try to get some of the questions in the audience. Jesse, I saw you in. Bloopity, Phantom, you guys are pretty regular. Appreciate you guys coming in. Azo, Wesley Curry stopped in to say hi. He's been on our show before, so shout out to him as well. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in. Please give us a like and subscribe if you don't mind. We'll see you guys next time. And we guys, again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys for coming on and dealing with us.